From Brisbane, Australia, this is episode 72 of The Normal Blokes, a podcast dedicated to improving the competitive 40k experience. I'm Dineeth, and today we've got the Necron Overlords of Brisbane on for an awesome coverage episode of the Necron Codex. Can I introduce the one and only Ben Warrior? How you going, man?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good. And we've got Mr. Stretch himself, Mr. I've got more height than movement on a hemlock, Lockie Carter. How you going?
Yeah, not bad. Someone told me this is going to be an Eldar podcast, but I guess we can talk about some Necrons if you want.
There's going to be no Eldar discussed today. And the original Necron, Nathan Bleakley. How you doing, man?
I've waited 60 million years for this podcast, mate. How you going?
Good, bro. So on today's episode, Necron players, you're going to love it. We're going to do a pretty deep coverage of the new Necron Codex. I brought these three lovely gentlemen on because not only have they got experience, playing with Crons more recently, but Nathan especially has done his time in 8th edition with the Necrons as well, so we've got some good perspectives on how the army has changed, what to look out for if you're looking at playing against Necrons, and some of the cool tricks that Necrons have for players to really capitalize on. But look, guys, it's great to have you on. I guess starting with Ben, then we'll go to Lockie, then we'll go to Nathan. Just introduce yourselves a bit and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey guys. So I think it's my second time talking to you all. So I've been playing 40k for longer than I care to admit. Necrons are my 2019 army, so I guess you call it my COVID army. So picked a really good time to start, about 6 months before the Codex. So pretty good, pretty happy with that.
He's definitely, mate. It's like catching the stock market when they're low. Getting into Cron 6 months ago, and now you're just riding that wave. But Lockie, it's your first time on the show. Tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Hey guys, how's it going? As with Ben, I think I've been playing 40k for a little bit longer than I'd care to admit. And I'm relatively new to the Necrons. I saw all the hype releases during COVID time and decided to pick myself up a couple of boxes of the Necrons half of Indominus and have been going from there. As with my intro, I have been a long time Eldar player, but I decided to branch out and try a few other different armies in 9th edition.
Yeah, Lockie's that kid that never eats his vegetables, and he's finally trying to eat a tomato.
Tomatoes are fruit.
Oh, fuck. 3 minutes in, and you got me, Ben. We've got to start recording again. And Nathan, man, it's great to have you on. Nathan's been on a few team events with me, and he's been playing for Normal Blokes for a little while. Introduce yourself. Tell everyone a bit about yourself, man.
Thanks, Dineeth. Been back into 40k for about 4 years. Definitely had a decision to make when I came back in, and to be honest, the Necrons seemed like the easiest army to paint because I'm not the keenest hobbyist. And I really tried to give them a good red hot crack in 8th edition, and had varying amounts of success. I think they're an awesomely themed army. I think there's some sick models in there, but I think also the way the model range is kind of structured, there's a lot of variety to the different builds you can take on. And I think 8th, the Codex was really good, but you can only mine that shallow pool so far, and I think there's definitely better times ahead in 9th.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember the day the Necron Codex came out, you were in GW to pick it up, and there was a doubles event on, and I was like, hey man, do you want to just play? And we ended up just winging a doubles event third place with the Necron book.
I think I think that was when I fell in love with the Veil of Darkness relic, when it popped over the back of the board into a bunch of cultists, and I still love it to this day. I don't think I've written a list without it in about 3 years.
My experience playing against them in 8th, I didn't even realise there was any other relics.
Yeah, no, I thought it was just the one. But,
the extra relic strat just gathers dust on the page, but I don't think that'll be the case now that we're hitting 9th. There's some cool stuff in here.
No.
Oh,
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I guess first off, on today's episode, it's probably going to be a long one. I don't know how long we'll record for, but I bet it's going to be long. So we're going to first cover the basic army rules, things like reanimation, command protocols, things like that. We'll briefly cover all the dynasties. The guys have some favorites, and they're going to talk about that, and we'll cover them pretty holistically. Like, we want to cover them with the strats, with the warlord traits, with the relics, so we can kind of just pocket that information all as one. We'll also cover the custom dynasties. We'll talk about the strats and a few that the guys are really interested in, and the specific unit changes that I guess the new book's bringing and what to look out for, and some list ideas and combos and even some secondaries that people might be picking. But I guess we'll dive straight into it, guys. Now, the big thing the Necrons had in 8th edition was reanimation protocols. How has that changed? What's new?
Well, I've got the book here, so I might field that one. So, as anyone that's played Necron in 8th knows, it was once a turn, start of your turn, roll a dice, on a 5 up, you get your models back. So, really good in smaller games where you didn't have the ability to absolutely annihilate units. But once you start getting to the 2K and you start playing good players, it was almost non-existent because your units were just being taken off the board. So it's changed a little bit, and I think it's probably the worst worded rule I've ever read. But when you simplify it, it's actually pretty easy to understand. So it's every time a unit finishes attacking, an enemy unit that is, you enact the reanimation protocols. So you roll a dice for each wound that died. So for 10 warriors, 10 dice, for 4 Lich Guard, 8 dice, a destroyer, 3 dice, you get the picture. And on a 5+, you put that dice into a pool. You then take out of the pool a number of dice equal to the wound characteristics of your models, and you put them back on the field. So if you were, say, resurrecting Lich Guard, which have a wound characteristic of 2, and you rolled 3 5s, you'd get one guy left, one guy back, and that last 5 would be lost because it doesn't make the full wound characteristic. But that happens after every enemy unit finishes shooting or fighting, so it comes in a lot more than old reanimation.
Yeah, so it sounds like it really benefits when you get one big hit and you stay alive, you can really recover for that next hit. And there's a few things that can modify that roll, aren't there? There's things that you can get +1, and there's things that re-roll and things like that. Tell us a little bit about those things while we're here.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways I'm aware of in the book of getting a +1, which is the Orb of Eternity Relic, which is a +1 Res Orb, which gives you a once per game in your command phase roll for everything that is dead, not everything that just died, so outside of a normal reanimation. And then the Canoptic Reanimator also gives you a +1 for a unit within 6 while it remains within 6. And I think it's a core unit as well.
And it also has to be visible
yes.
As well. I think...
Just to note as well, you can never get more than... So it's not a core unit, sorry, but you can never get more than +1. So if you were to use an orb with something that's been reanimated, you'd still just be reanimating on 4+.
Yeah, fair enough. And warriors reroll 1s to reanimate, is that correct?
They do, and then you've got like your Cryptex, your Technomancer, and your Ghost Arc. They reanimate D3 warriors in the command phase.
Nice.
And the Cryptech can do 1 core model instead.
Nice. I'm actually going to take this time to segue the entire conversation for a second and just have a chat. Me and Ben have been spending the last 2 weeks tagging each other in Facebook posts where people are really salty about the new rules and have got really interesting views on what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. And I'd just like to say, I think this book is fucking awesome. And I think the reanimation rules are great. What do you guys think? You obviously think that because you're playing the army, right?
Yeah, 100% agree, bro.
Yeah.
It's turned from something which, against a good player, is irrelevant to something that you can use. Yes, it doesn't work on every single... It's not super effective on every single unit. Things like destroyers and stuff like that with 3+ wounds. We've all seen the math hammer that the chances of getting them back if you lose 1 or 2 is not great. But then when you're getting 1 out of 3 still on average back if you happen to lose 3 from a single attack, it's still something which is better than last edition where essentially it could be nullified by any half decent player.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry, Ben, you go.
The thing for me is that I feel it's incredibly representative of what Necron should be. I know last edition you had your big destroyer bricks because of extermination protocols, and you had your wraiths and stuff, but this, Necrons should be phalanxes of warriors, should be units of immortals, should be Lich Guard. It shouldn't be armies of 3 wound models that are just trying to shoot people off the board. It's completely changing what Necrons are as an army, and I think this is incredibly representative of this. It's why the warriors have reroll 1s. It's
And
I just think it's cool. Like,
and to go on from that, I think they've actually been really representative of the jump from 8th to 9th edition, because, as you were saying, Ben, I think as the edition went on, not only because like when you're playing a smaller game compared to a big game, the reanimation protocols got worse, but as the game became more killy with all the additional codexes and psychic awakening, it was really hard to keep that unit alive to the next battle round. Whereas now, I think they've also moved on from being that shooting efficiency army with all the Doomsday Arcs and Doomsize and Destroyers, to now they are that sort of that immovable phalanx of skeleton warriors that just keep coming back.
Which is what Necron should be.
Exactly right. And I think in the intricacies of the rules, of the actual reanimation protocol rules, that makes it so much better. Two real big restrictions in the 8th edition codex were, one, you couldn't come back in engagement range, what was previously within 1 inch of enemy models. So it used to be that a smart player would get that unit down very small and then wrap around them so that you couldn't get any models back. And you used to not be able to bring back models that were lost from morale. And now, because you can bring them back when you're in engagement range of other models, it really increases the versatility of how you can bring those models back, and also the fact that you can bring them back one at a time, which is massive.
Well, when I first read it, I was like, so if I've got a single warrior left alive and he's wrapped by guardsmen, and then I res, I can then wrap the guardsmen, like, because of coherency rules. I was like, yeah, this is cool.
I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me.
Yeah, but exactly as Nathan was saying, because the way the rule is worded, you put models down one at a time, and I've checked. Please, someone tell me I'm wrong here, if I am, but there is nothing saying that you have to put them down with models that were already there at the start of the phase. You still have to be in coherency, but because you put them down one at a time, you can chain off them. So you can reanimate. Yeah. You can reanimate onto objectives, and your obsec and potentially double obsec if you're in the right dynasty. Like, if you res 5 guys because of their base sizes, you can get 12 inches of movement off those 5 dudes. Like, it's silly, and I can't believe.
Remembering it's still the slightly different coherency rules from 8th edition, especially with bigger squads and things like warriors. But yes, no, I could not see anywhere. I believe you definitely can essentially daisy chain them out.
Yeah, I checked the general FAQ. I checked the old horror FAQ for splitting horrors, and that doesn't exist anymore. Like, to set a precedent, but like, yeah, course, it's kind of silly.
With the restriction in the charge phase that you can't reduce your charge amount, essentially you can't decrease your charge by
coming forward
from Overwatch, something like that.
But that's the only restriction for where you place models.
Yes, that's correct.
Except not going into engagement range of something that you weren't in engagement range, but just being able to like pull things out of combat and res on the other side of your units, like it's just amazing.
Yeah,
like, I can't believe people are upset about it just because, oh no, my destroyers are not going to res all the time.
Yeah, and I think that really sums up the difference between, trying to look at a rule just on paper and just seeing, like, the obvious combos, to really thinking about how it can interact in these situations. And that's really cool that you guys have, come up with that and realized that, because, yeah, I agree. I think it's very, very strong in the right hands, and if you know how to use it well. But I guess we'll move right into the command protocols before we step into, going through the dynasties. Guys, how do the command protocols work? I'll pawn this to Nathan. How do the command protocols work? How do they work? And, what do they do?
Thanks, Dineeth. I think this is probably one of the things I was most excited about, just because, as I was saying, that 8th edition codex, while there was a lot to it, was a little bit shallow in parts, and this extra layer really can add a lot to the army. So command protocols work if every unit from your army is from the same dynasty, excluding Catan shards and like the Silent King, and if you have a noble model as your warlord. So that would be an Overlord, the Silent King, Catacomb Command Barge, those sort of models. And basically there's 6 protocols you can choose from, given the missions are 5. Turn game, once you've deployed, but before you know who's going first, you select 5 protocols in the order that you're going to reveal them, excluding one. And then once the game starts, when it hits your start of your command phase, you reveal what you're doing in that battle round. Sorry, not your command phase, top of the battle round. You reveal what you're doing for that battle round to your opponent at the start of each battle round. And each of these command protocols have 2 directives. So you select the command protocols, but then you still have the additional choice of which directive you're going to use from each of these. So there is a lot of versatility to it. I wouldn't say it's quite as set and forget as like Space Marine Doctrines or anything like that, but I think there is still like a lot of sneaky power in here, and there are ways to manipulate the command protocols in the book, and we'll definitely be talking about that when we get to the big fella.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting here as well, Nathan, that each dynasty has one protocol that it can use both directives of at the same time. It doesn't have to choose.
I'll just add to what Nathan was saying, that I feel that the command protocols themselves are one of the biggest sort of ways you can demonstrate your skill with this army. I believe you have to have a good idea of what's going to happen in the battle when you look at your opponent's army to pick which command protocol you're going to apply to which turn of the game, and yes, you do consider your potential options for playing around with them with the Silent King and things like that, but it really has a higher skill ceiling of what you can do with them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of them are truly game changing. Like, there's some that are like Overwatch on 5s and giving you bonuses to move and stuff. Like, if you can pick that well, that is truly like demonstrating your skills as a player.
Yeah, not being predictable as well. Like, you don't want the person that you play 3 or 4 times to go, oh yeah, he's going to do this, then, and this. So you want to move him around, not take the same ones all the time. So being adaptable and flexible, as Nathan said, it adds so much depth to what you can do and how you can mess with people.
I found one of the things I was thinking about most when looking at was actually which one I wasn't going to apply. Again, we'll touch on it a bit more when it comes to the Silent King, but the ability to then potentially pull that in at any point in time throughout the game, that was one of the biggest decisions I found when I was thinking through what order I might want to put them in.
Yeah, it's like a mini game within the game again, right? Like it's it's that really cool dynamic of your opponent's also trying to pick, okay, this has happened, and now he might have the next one next, and then you're trying to trick them on the other side. So I think it's really cool. Did we want to touch on them really briefly, guys? Do you want to read them out?
I've got them sitting here in front of me. Do you want me to read them?
Yeah, go for it, Lachie. Just really briefly, yeah. Oh, yeah, 2 each works too, yeah.
Yep, alright, okay. I'll start with Eternal Guardian. I'm not sure which ones we were assigned, but I'm going to start with Eternal Guardian. Basically, the 2 directives for that one are each time an attack is made against this unit, if it did not make a normal move, advance, or fallback that battle round, it receives the benefit of light cover. And the second directive is each time an enemy unit declares a charge, it can basically have the benefit of defensible terrain, even if it's not within defensible terrain. So it gets the option to hold steady or Overwatch on 5s. And as Dineeth just mentioned, I believe that one in particular is one that you can really make use of when people aren't expecting you're about to be charged with a squad of 20 warriors or something like that. Hey, look, you've got Overwatch on 5s. It's quite strong.
Or one up save Lich Guard.
Yes, one up save Lich Guard. And then my personal favourite one, actually, is Protocol of the Sudden Storm. So, Directive 1 is 1 inch to movement characteristics of models in this unit. And Directive 2 is if this unit is before in action, it can still make attacks with ranged weapons without the action failing.
Stop the fucking presses. This is insane.
So, again, the 1 inch movement seems quite obvious how it's going to be used. You can use it fairly early, and the obvious way to use it seems fairly early in the game, push out onto the objectives. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you have this in the first battle round and you have your pre-game move custom dynasty, it actually gives you the 6 inch move for those infantry units that only have 5. So that's the fairly obvious one there, but then, hey, this is something new for these new codexes. You can do actions while still shooting. That can be incredibly powerful in the right situation. So, again, really shows the skill as a player how you use these.
I can see that being like a late game gotcha moment when a Death Mark unit drops in, deploys scramblers, and then snipes a character.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's Nihilak that gets double directive on this one, hey?
Nefrek.
On the Eternal Guardian.
Nefrek.
Never mind. Nefrek's still fucking awesome, so that's great.
It just makes things so more efficient.
Yeah.
So much more efficient.
did you want me to keep going, or did you?
Oh,
you guys
Lockie,
want to
you
take
know
over?
what? You go ahead, mate. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's good. Next one is Protocol of the Vengeful Stars. So directive 1 for this one is each time a model in a unit makes a range attack, an unmodified wound roll of 6, the armor penetration is increased by 1. And directive 2 is each time the model in this unit makes a range attack that targets the unit within half range, the target does not receive the benefit of cover to its saving throw. To me, this one seems one of the ones that I'm not so fond of. I mean, it's 1 in 6 attacks gets 1 in 6 wounds, gets +1 AP. It's not the greatest in my opinion, although still could be good against a big squad of warriors or something like that. If you know if you're going to be veiling some Gorth Reaper warriors in that turn, could still be useful. But the ignore cover can still be quite good against if you've got a hope of Marines in cover, or if you start playing Raven Guard or something like that, that gets the cover bonus for shooting from outside of 12.
I think one of the things that makes me agree with you here, Lockie, that this is probably the one of the 6 I'm probably least impressed with is there's like dynasty traits and strats in the book that let you do this when you need it and do it better. So there's a strat to ignore cover in any circumstance for a unit for the entire phase, which is just better from any range. And then if you want additional armor penetration, there's dynasties that just do that a little bit better for the entire game.
And just correct me
I'm with
if
both you boys as well. I think it's probably the one I've been using the least, but I have just realised that it is any benefits of cover. So if you're on something like a board with a lot of woods, like ignoring the neg 1 to hit for dense cover, it has uses, but I think you're probably right. It's one of the less good ones.
Yeah, and
it definitely does say does not receive the benefits of cover to its saving throw. So to me, that is definitely all. It's not just light cover or anything like that.
It's the same for that strat, Solar Pulse. So again, same thing can be done.
Yeah,
elsewhere, I think.
And on the other side of it, guys, like if I'm an opponent and I see you flip this card, I just go, oh yeah, that's not too bad. I'm just gonna cop this for a turn, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Or this is where this might be a good candidate. We'll get to this later. Maybe the Silent King's ability, where you're going to sub it out. It might be turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, where you'll want to sub it out for one of the 2 other ones in reserve. So it might be good in some circumstances, but it's good
you could,
because you want to sub it out.
You could use it as like a place filler. Bloody hell.
Next one, Protocol of the Hungry Void. So each time directive 1, each time the model in this unit makes a melee attack, unmodified wound roll of 6, gets an extra point of AP. And directive 2, each time the model in this unit makes a melee attack, if the unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed heroic intervention, add 1 to that attack's strength characteristic. But this is basically the melee version of the previous one.
But way better.
I find it way better. Personally, I find that I feel that the Cron's book is really heavily leaning into melee. And this one also stacks quite well with a lot of the dynasty traits like Navok and even several of the other ones that you can get some ridiculous buffs.
Yeah, you can get Scythe Guard,
things
Strength
like
9.
Yeah, even things like Warriors in melee can be quite a big threat with some of the buffs that you can stack on them.
And this is the one that Navok doubles up on, hey?
Yeah,
correct.
I think Nathan was telling me before you can get Navok Lichguard to like 6 attack at strength 9, neg 5, 2 damage, ridiculousness.
Because core units also have the strat to add 1 to their strength, it's fairly easy for Warriors, Immortals, Lichguard to get +2 to their strength. So even with the Sword and Shield boys, you're hitting on strength 8 on a turn. This one's probably an easy one also to know when you'll need it. Turn usually like between 2 and 4 is one probably where you're going to get a lot of leverage out of this one because you're going to get stuck in.
I think setting this
a lot of Necron units are right at that point where just adding 1 to their strength, like you get Scarabs to strength 4, Warriors to strength 5, Lichguard to strength 7 or 8, and then a lot of the characters, as you mentioned, Ben,
even
the
things like Skullpack Destroyers, the Thresher Blades go to strength 6 and the Reap Blade goes to strength 8, I believe.
Yeah, so you don't need to worry about the Plasma Sight.
Yep. And again, even with the Plasma Sight, then you're wounding, those Reap Blades are wounding even T8 targets on 3s, wounding things, T7 tanks and things like that, even with the Thresh Blades on 4s. So this one again, looks fairly straightforward, but big thing for me with this one is picking the timing.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have, if you're not going really heavy into melee with a Navoclist or something like that, you're not super stacking those buffs. Picking the timing for this one, you really need to know. Okay, this is when I'm really going to be hitting with a few units.
It could also be reactionary though. Like you could pop because if you're going second, you pop this at the start of the battle round. So if someone's about to charge into your 60 warriors, you suddenly make them all strength 5 for the return attacks, and that's not nice.
No, it is not. As I said, yeah, this is actually one that I considered having not originally applied and using it as the swap in power with the Silent King. When I knew I was going to either be charged or charge with the whole heap of things in that battle round.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because this is the one that, like, I feel it's so crucial to have it on the turn that you hit. Like, it throws the mat so much, right?
It does. Yeah. It does. Next one up is Protocol of the Undying Legions. So directive 1 for this one is each time this unit uses its living metal ability, each model in the unit regains 1 additional lost wound. And we haven't really touched on it, but if you're familiar with the 8th edition Necron's Codex, living metal was on a few units. It's on pretty much everything.
Everything with more than 1 wound.
Everything
so good.
Wound, yes.
So good.
So you've got a... this one comes up, you've got a destroyer with 1 wound left, it's full life. Again, not a massive buff here, but just healing up a wound here or there. We've all seen what the Space Marine apothecaries, how much of a pain in the arse they are.
A wound here and there, a whole fucking ATV.
Not
just
because
apothecaries can do Necrons better than Necrons doesn't mean enthusiasm, boys. Stay optimistic.
Yeah.
But this could be the difference between getting like a Doomsday Arc back up the top profile instead of being on one, like just below top profile, like, or the Silent King back to his top profile, so you don't have to use the strat to act at full. Like it's just.
Or your characters that have taken a couple of wounds, then now they're getting 2 wounds back in a turn.
Yeah.
It can be quite good.
Well,
the second directive. Also... Oops, sorry, can I cover the second directive and then we finish talking about it? I did get distracted there. Each time you make a reanimation protocols for this unit, you can reroll 1 of the dice. So a free reroll on Ram, not a terrible thing. I personally feel that the living metal one is more likely to be used, but again, the benefit of these command protocols is that when you get to the turn where you've got this one on, you can pick it if you think it's going to help.
So wait a second, is this every time you make a reanimation roll for that unit, you can reroll 1 dice?
Correct.
That's pretty fucking obnoxious. That's awesome.
Also, given how the multi-model units work, I'll use Scarab as an example because their stocks have risen a little bit with this book. Because they need the 4 dice to come back. Like it's a little bit annoying when you get that dice pool mechanic now and you get like 3 dice. Actually, if I have 1 more dice, I get a whole Scarab back, or I get a whole Destroyer back, or a whole Wraith, and just. And I think given how the command reroll condition is last edition, when there's 1 dice you really want to reroll, you still have the urge to, like, I need to be able to reroll that dice. And I think this scratches that itch a little bit.
Yeah, it's something we forgot to mention. Reanimation Protocols is now on everything that's not a vehicle. So all your Canoptic stuff get its stat as well. They didn't last edition.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So stuff like your Wraiths and your Scarabs and your Destroyers, all your multi-wound models have living metal and reanimation. So, you kill 1, you get it back, and then that one that you wounded also heals to full wounds. Like, it's just a bit silly.
Wow.
I can confirm I've gotten a Canoptic Spider back through reanimation protocols, so it's a good time, boys.
Oh my goodness. What?
I'm glad I wasn't your opponent when that happened.
Well, you lose 2. You get to roll 12 dice. You only need 6 of them to come up with 5 ups. And,
yeah, we've all had those games where you played someone with Death Guard and they've rolled 10 out of 12 5 ups, and you're just like, it's now my time.
Oh, we said we wouldn't talk about Wayne on the podcast, boys. Come on.
I think also this is almost when going very quickly back to reanimation protocols, it's almost a better feel no pain because it just completely disregards damage.
Yep.
Your warrior gets shot with a Morty bloody D6 damage, like Scythe, assuming you survive. You just make the roll, comes back, good times.
Yeah, cops a volcano cannon to the face, and on a 5-up, he's back.
Oh,
Just
jeez.
Necron things.
Yeah, it's better than Shield Drone. Alright, Lucky, what's the next one?
The last one, Protocol of the Conquering Tyrant. So Directive 1 is add 3 inch to the range of this unit's aura abilities, and increase the range of the following abilities this unit has to by a maximum of 3. To a maximum of 12, sorry. Lord's Will and My Will Be Done, and Rites of Reanimation. And Directive 2 is this unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back, but if it does, then to the end of its turn, it takes -1 to the hit roll.
That's pretty sick.
So to me, that Directive 1, it's all about, that's the big one for that one for me. Yes, fall back and shoot. Again, that's still really good as well. But my thinking around this particular protocol has been, rather than using Sudden Storm early on in the game to move out, use Conquering Tyrant, add 3 inch to the range of the +1 movement aura that a lot of the Lord, no, not Lord, Overlord, Catacomb Command Barge, Silent King.
Yeah. Relentless March, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Because that's the turn you're going to be shelled up, right at the start of the game.
Yep, and so basically it's with 2 or 3 characters with that buff and them doing 9 inches each. It's very easy for them to get your whole army in range of that, and they get the +1 movement for turn 1, and then you can keep something like Sudden Storm for later in the game when you might be doing actions, and you can do the whole shoot while doing actions thing. And that's, again, on top of the fact that you can just pick, hey, I can fall back and shoot with a -1, but
that's why I really like. It's why I really like Sautek, because this is the one where Sautek get both. So you can My Will Be Done a unit that's 12 inches away that just fell back and hit on your ballistic skill. Like, they counter-act each other out.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yep, so I think I may have butchered the wording when I first said that, but it's, so the Directive 1 is 3 inches to the range of this unit's aura abilities, Lord's Will, My Will Be Done, and Rites of Reanimation, up to a maximum of 12. So I believe they start at 6, and I think there's a couple of different.
No, My Will Be 9 now.
So why they're specifying those 3 abilities out is because they're not actually aura abilities. They're the Lord's Will, My Will Be Done, and the Rites of Reanimation, the 9-inch protocols of the Lord, Overlord, and the Cryptek. But the part of that directive I really like is adding 3 of the aura abilities, because there's a lot more auras now in the Necron book. Off the top of my head, the Silent King 6-inch goes to a 9-inch. And the Canoptic Control Node, which we'll come to in the Cryptex, that goes from 6 to 9 to get +1 to hit for all your Canoptic units. So there's a lot of auras in this book that are really nice.
Immediately comes to mind for me with that one is the Warlord trait, Implacable Conqueror. When a friendly dynastic unit within 6 of the Warlord, you can reroll charge rolls. Again, focusing on the melee side of Crons. Return, you've got 9-inch aura of rerollable charges. You've got a couple of score Lich Guard, Wraiths, Scorpeg Destroyers, anything like that. That's a really big buff for them to have. Makes a lot of those charges they're going to make quite reliable.
I'm going to burst your bubble a tiny bit
just
there.
Core,
Lucky, it's
mate.
core.
I was just about to Nathan beat me to it.
My bad, okay.
But it does actually...
Guard, though.
I'll consolation prize it a little. It does synergize really well with the Warlord trait, Thrall of the Silent King, which already adds 3 to your auras. So you can blow out some auras that were originally 6, like the Canoptic Control Node, and blow it out to a 12. So that's really nice.
Jeez. That's fucking sick for turn 1. So, yeah, I guess with all those protocols, guys, I think we've covered the ones that we think are pretty strong, and there's actually some cool tech choices in the ones that you can say you can use as a sub out for the powerful melee one. I guess the next thing we kind of talked about living metal. Really quickly, we'll cover the Royal Court rules. Ben, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so basically that just means that that your Warlord has to be specified depending on what level of characters you have. So if you have a Silent King, he is the Silent King. He must be your Warlord. Otherwise, it has to be a Pharaon if you have one of the named characters, or you use the strat to upgrade an Overlord, then an Overlord, then a Lord, and then any character. So, for example, if you've got a Lord, your Cryptek can't be your natural Warlord. You have to use the strat for that, and so on and so forth.
I like it as it's like a very thematic way to play the army. Like, how many times do you see like a Grey Knight army with like Voldus and Drago and this little fuckwit librarian's a Warlord, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, it's very fluffy, and to be honest, I don't think it doesn't negatively impact you enough to complain about it, I guess, is the way I see it.
I think if there's one part of the book that isn't super crash hot, it would be perhaps the Warlord traits, but I think it's kind of made up for the fact that some of those Warlord traits are good as like the second or third Warlord trait with the strat, which they didn't have in the last book.
I think there's a couple of really good Warlord traits, but we'll talk about them in a minute.
Awesome. So I guess that leads us into the dynasties, guys. So the 5 dynasties, well now 6, there's a 6th one. We'll split it up. We'll give you guys 2 each. So Ben, why don't you lead off with Sautek and Zerrikan?
Yeah, so the Sautek guys, the good thing I think about 9th is that all the dynasties got improved. They all went from 1 effect to 2. And they all have the double specific command protocol. So Sautek gives you reroll for morale, always useful because you can't reanimate off models that run away to morale. And they rapid fire at 18 inches as well. So really good for Flayer Warriors, Gorse Immortals, just that extra pipper range that means you're out rapid firing like bolt rifle intercessors or stuff like that. Their double protocol, as I said before, is the Conquering Tyrant, so the fall back and shoot and the extra aura range, which I think is really cool. The Zarakan one gives you a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds, so I guess the bane of T-Suns and Death Guard, respectively. And reroll 1 wound every time you make a unit's attacks. Their double protocol is Undying Legions, so the Living Metal and the reroll reanimation. So again, really cool. I like both of them. I've written up lists with both of them. The one I'm leaning on towards at the moment is Sautek, but all the dynasties got better. It's one of the things I felt that they lacked in 8th edition, was those sort of army-wide rules that made them playable, and now we're starting to see that with the better dynasty codes, the better command protocols, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like in 8th, it almost felt like every dynasty had like 2 out of 3 things right? Like, there's a few, like Sautek's all the cool characters, all the abilities, but then you lose out on certain things, and like, Novak had all this combat power, but they had no delivery system and stuff like that. So it's really cool now that they're really getting fleshed out.
I'll go through the dynasty-specific strats as well. And
feel free to hit the strats, Warlord trait, and Relic and stuff all in one hit, man.
Yeah, so Sautek, their strat has stayed the same. So once you damage a model, once they take a wound, friendly Sautek get +1 to attack rolls against it. That might have changed to be in any phase now, actually. It's 2 CP. I can't remember if in 8th it was just the shooting phase, but now you can get +1 in melee as well. Their Warlord trait is the refund CP on a 5-up, always useful. And their relic is basically the Vexator Mask, but it's called the Vanquisher's Mask, and it's pick a unit start a fight phase within 3 inches, and it's not eligible to fight until all other eligible units from the Necron army have done so.
Love the wording.
Yes, that wording definitely does clarify some of those questions that was around the fight last strats and the interrupt strat.
No interrupt for you. The Zarakan strat is 18-inch range of a Zarakan unit, 4-up Dineeth psychic power, which is always good because Necrons obviously don't have a lot of denying.
Definitely a lot more psychic defense now in this book, which is sorely needed.
Yeah, and then their Warlord trait and relics are actually my favorite. So the Zarakan Warlord trait is that you can double a protocol. So you select 4 and double the protocol on 2 battle rounds instead of having 1 per battle round. So that means you can double up on a Hungry Void, or you can have 2 that you can potentially trade in with the Silent King, which is really good. And their relic, the Sovereign Coronal, is noble only, but it means that your protocols proc on a 9-inch aura from your characters, not a 6, and everything within, or every core unit within 9 of the bearer gets both directives all the time. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, that's my favorite relic in the book. Actually, I think it's got a lot of potential.
So every single turn, core units within range get double direct. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, and the range is 9, not 6.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of that one. I've been playing around with a couple of list ideas using Zerakan.
And I think because Zerakan, you're already trying to bubble up those units already with the Silent King. Like, you're already playing in towards, like, trying to get as many units in that bubble as possible. So you're definitely going to be leveraging it.
Yeah, especially if you're taking the Silent King, because all his stuff procs off core. So I imagine that the Zerakan list is going to be a lot of like Silent King with a fair amount of warriors and immortals. Maybe some Lich Guard in there as well, but I think it's definitely a really good relic. Like, just pop it on a Lord or an Overlord that sits behind the Silent King, and then, you know, everything's getting reroll to hit, reroll to wound, double directives. It just starts multiplying.
Yeah, wow. So, you know, I reckon both of them are pretty cool. Do you think, Ben, that people will still play Sautek because Sautek's obviously got a lot of the big characters in it from, you know, 8th edition and before. Do you think it'll still be popular, or will people start to gravitate towards some of the other stuff, you reckon?
Look, I think all of them have play. It's one of my favourite things about this book as I look more into it, is that there's no absolute standout.
There's no Latok, yeah.
Yeah, there's no, I'm going to take this because it's definitely better than everything else. It all depends on your play style. And as I say, the extra rapid fire range for Immortals and Warriors, like, if you want to take that sort of Silver Tide list around the Silent King, I definitely see Sautek having a place there, especially with some of their characters, which we'll cover later, but some of their characters have got really good abilities. Like Vect abilities.
Like my boy Zandrek, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's where their power is going to be, that sort of Silver Tide list with the named characters sprinkled in for the tech. Yeah. Which is what my current list is, so I might be talking myself up here. But
who has played a lot of Eldar, you can't underestimate that one-off Vect ability to change the game at a key point. It comes up a lot more than you would actually think. It sounds powerful, yes, but the game-changing ability of it is really good.
Yeah.
And you don't have to roll for it.
Oh yeah, man.
Not.
It just happens.
Especially now, you can't re-roll it with actual Vect.
Yeah, and like, sorry, I was going to say can't get vected back. Like, it just happens.
Sorry, you can't have that. I vect your Vect.
I'm going to lizard vect your Eldar Vect. I'm going to robot vect your lizard Vect.
Oh my god.
And I think Zerakan, the 5-up mortal wound save, like, obviously really good against psychic powers, so it's gonna upset T-Suns and Dray Knights, but also just that it's just a 5-up mortal wound save, so you start looking at stuff like the Blight Bombardment and stuff from Death Guard, just giving you that extra durability that Necrons traditionally haven't had. I think it's going to be really good as well. Like,
yeah, man.
Or Titan powers from other Necron armies.
Exactly.
And
I think also, because I forgot to mention that mortals don't work. Mortals go through reanimation protocols, so this kind of rounds out their durability.
Nah, Katana bad, Lockie.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
All right, guys. So, Lockie, I'll move on to you, mate. Actually, no, I got Nathan next on the list with Novik and Nefrik. Hit us up, man.
Thanks, D. So I think at the tail end of 8th and the start of 9th, Novik was my baby. I wanted to make Slappy Corons work with varying, mostly minor degrees of success. I think in this book, given the wide range of units now, I think it has a lot of play. So the two bonuses for that one are add one to the charge rolls made for units with this code. So like you mentioned before, Dineeth, that delivery system, getting that +1 charge obviously has a lot of play in a lot of different situations. And the second one, is each time a model with this code makes a melee attack, if that model's unit makes a charge move, was charged or performed a heroic intervention this turn, improve the AP characteristic by 1. So that's obviously going to lead itself not so much towards the Scorpex and the Lich Guard, which already have pretty hectic AP already, but I think Novoke is one that's actually quite good for the Silver Tide or Blade ones or those ones that aren't already awesome in melee.
Yeah, having played Marine Centurions for a long time, that neg 1 on the bolters for Tac Doctrine makes a hell of a difference.
And then, as we mentioned before, Protocol of the Hungry Void doubles up here, so you can get that additional AP on 6 to wound. And because there's a lot of ways, I'll jump straight to the strat here. In the fight phase, basically, you can add 1 to the attack characteristic for a unit for that whole fight phase. You add this to a character like Anrakir, the Traveller, who is awesome with this dynasty because he has that range to add within 6. It's an aura ability just to add 1 to the attack characteristic core units. You're looking at warrior units that when you're in Protocol of the Hungry Void, when you're using the strat, when you're near Anrakir, like you're fighting on 3 attacks each, hitting on 2s, strength 5, neg 1 AP. You turn these average-looking units into pretty good blenders.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, Nathan, Novak now have a more reliable delivery system with that, so it just makes them a bit better.
Novak Flayed ones scare me.
And
especially
Flayed ones are the ones that have the strat to fight twice as well. That can get quite ridiculous.
With the Novak strats, 4 attacks exploding on 6s at neg 2 at strength 5.
And then you use their 2 CP because they're the only thing in the book to fight again. So they can get crazy.
Oh shit. Okay, I'm gonna have to manage that.
I think honestly, if you wanted to run like full on Silver Tide, I reckon like a bunch of flayed ones with a bunch of warriors near Anrakir wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, unfortunately Anrakir won't affect the flayed ones, but you still get them 4 attacks each with exploding 6s.
Shit. Well, and you've covered the Wall of Trait and Relic there, Nathan.
Yeah, so just the relic here is just a scythe that basically adds 2 to the attack characteristic of anything that's fighting the war scythe. To be honest, I think the Void Reaper is probably you might as well take the generic relic, which is the Void Reaper, which is a 3 damage scythe instead of a 2 damage scythe, and it also has the Night Bringer ability that ignores Feel No Pains and wound caps.
Yep.
So it's okay. And then the Wall of Trait is just you do mortals on I'm not sure if it's 6s to hit or wound.
Yeah, 6s to wound.
Yeah, so characters just don't make enough attacks for that really to have much power. Maybe Scorpec with the small swings, but it's probably not worth that slot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you've got an army that has so many beat stick units, why do you need a beat stick character? But yeah,
this is probably a dynasty where, like as Lockie was saying before, maybe Implacable Conqueror would be a cool Warlord trait because you're getting those core units to reroll the charges that already have +1 to charge.
Yes.
So I think there's a bit of play with this with that dynasty, and I think there'll be certain dynasties that I think most people will lean into first. But I think if you want to do melee crons, I think it's hard to go away from the ones whose code is Awakened by Murder.
The coolest name.
Yeah. Awesome, man. And look, I actually really like the changes they've made to Nephric. Hit us up with that.
Yeah, Nephric, the density code called Translocation Beams. So the first part of the density code is that everyone gets a 6-up invo save. Always nice. Having played Death Skull Orcs, 6-up invul save is never something to turn your nose up at if everyone gets it. And then the second part, I think the part Dineeth's quite excited about. Each time a unit with this code advances, it can translocate. If it does, do not make an advance roll for this unit. Instead, until the end of the phase, add 6 to the movement characteristic of the models in the unit. If the unit translocates until the end of the phase, it can't shoot. Perhaps the better part, each time with the unit with this code falls back until the end of the phase, it can move through models and across terrain as if they were not there.
Oh my god. It's like John Cena, mate.
Unwrappable Necrons.
Yeah, that was one
Yay.
of. I was looking at a warrior horde list, and that was one of the ones that I was leaning towards. That combined with a couple of royal wardens, so let them fall back and still shoot, and unwrappable. Not
I think it's
having
also
a
good.
proper building army out of it yet, but I think it's got some play.
Mate, you know what's? It's
Yeah.
great to hear that all 4 of these that we've talked about can make a viable Silvertide. It's pretty sick.
Blow the dust off the warrior models, boys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I got 80. Almost half painted.
Those are rookie numbers, man. I'm sitting on 120.
Yeah, about the same, Dineeth.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, hit us up with the strats, relics, warlord traits for Necfric.
Also, just with this one, it doubles up on Southern Storm, which I actually think is probably
nice.
one of the best to
Yeah.
double up on with the +1 move and the doing actions while you can shoot as well. So it's a great one to have going with both at once.
Yeah.
With the strat for this one, you can basically give any unit dimensional translocation, which is basically just any unit can deep strike. When you can basically make a warrior unit deep strike for 1 CP, I think that's pretty good. Sorry, it's called translocation crypt, but still pretty good. In terms of the warlord trait and relic, the warlord trait's pretty okay. Neg 1 hit on any character might be good on a Catacomb Command Barge or a Scorpic Lord. And I think a return of a Dineeth favourite from 8th edition from when you were running the cons Dineeth. The Solar Star, it's back.
Oh, my boy, the Solar Staff. What does it do now?
So a Nephric model with a Staff of Light only, so that's pretty much an Overlord Catacomb Command Barge or a Technomancer. The relic replaces the Staff of Light, 24 inches, Assault 6, Strength 5, Neg 2, 1 damage. And each time an attack is made with this weapon against an infantry unit, a hit is scored. Then, until the end of the turn, that unit is blinded. Blinded units cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. So it's solid, but I think it's a bit more niche than some of the other things.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this, sending my flayed ones into like random aggressor units and stuff, and then fail my charge and I'd die anyway, but yeah, it's cool to see it's still there.
Yeah, slightly less useful in 9th now. You have to pay for Overwatch, but
Yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
the thing for me is that I feel that the generic relic voltaic staff is almost always better to take,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it
The
also
Voltaic
replaces
Staff.
Staff of Light, and so it's on the exact same models.
yeah, Nathan likes the Voltaic stuff.
I'm a fan
Oh,
of voltaic staff too.
I'll get to that. Don't worry.
Okay, I was going to say, do we want to touch on that while we're here, or are we going to come to that later?
I think
Let's
we'll
do
hit
it now.
Oh, yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, well, I'm too keen to talk about it today. So with this Voltaic Staff, it's replaces the Staff of Light, Assault 4, Strength 6, Neg 2, 2 damage. Same profile in melee, and then when you shoot with it, it scores an unmodified hit. Modified hit scores 2 additional hits. So it's a Tesla. It's a 2 damage Tesla with AP, which is pretty solid.
Mate, is that what the hex rate should have been?
You leave my boy alone.
Oh, that's bloody awesome, man. Like, it can just sprout like heaps of damage from like a random character that's untargetable. Like, it's pretty sick. And did you say 18-inch range?
Yeah, man.
18-inch range, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty solid, man. Awesome. So I guess we'll finish off the name dynasties, Lockie, with Mefrit and Nihilak. Go for it.
So unfortunately, first you guys bubble a little bit. I'm not as big a fan of these 2 dynasties as I am of the other 4. My list building, I've been mostly looking at the other 4. But that's not to say they're terrible. There is still some good things within them, so we'll get to that. We'll start with Mefrit. So Mefrit adds 3-inch to the range characteristics of non-pistol range weapons that models with this code are equipped with. And the second part is that each time a model with this code makes a range attack that targets a unit within half range, the armor penetration characteristic of that attack is improved by 1. Again, both of those things can be good, particularly with an intro, so extra with rapid fire. Extra AP, which is equivalent, very similar to ignoring cover, but is always better because works on things that are not in cover as well. But I feel it just doesn't have the same level of abilities as some of the other dynasties.
Yeah, I think the problem with both Mefrit and Nikolak are that you get more out of the custom dynasties, which we'll cover in a second.
That's what I was about to
totally
touch on. I
agree.
feel that they both can be done better taking half of them and then the other half as a custom dynasty. And I'll just touch on it now because so Mefrit's double up protocol is Vengeful Stars, which, as we covered earlier, is probably one of the weaker ones.
The weakest.
Yep. And Nihilak's double up is Eternal Guardian, which, while good, I feel the way you use that, you don't really need both. Both protocols at the same time. It's the Overwatch.
That's the Overwatch one,
fives,
yeah.
or the game benefit of
Light cover.
essentially, or the second one is the light cover if you haven't moved. So I feel that those ones you don't generally need both at the same time. You're probably trying, if going second, using the light cover because you haven't moved, or you're doing it later in the game to try and get the Overwatch or the +1 attack when you get charged. I feel that that's why these two are both better done by the custom dynasties, but we will keep going. So for Mefrit, the Warlord trait is +1 attack and +1 strength on the Warlord. Again, not the greatest one there, but you can have, we've talked about some of these relic weapons you can get and things like that. +1 attack, +1 strength. Grabbing one of those relic weapons or something like that can be quite good. And again, it's probably one of those ones that you want to grab with the strat for an extra Warlord trait.
It feels weird in Mefrit giving a Warlord trait for +1 strength, +1 attack to your Warlord for the shooting dynasty. Feels like it should be another dynasty.
Maybe if it was +1 strength to your weapon and +1 to their...
I'll pull one out here for the Sniper Barge, which used to be the old combo with Mefrit. Pouring one out for that right now.
And the relic for Mefrit is the Conduit of Stars. So it replaces a relic Gorse Blaster and is rapid fire 3, strength 6, then 2 damage, and I believe it's 36 inches. So
it is, yes.
Rapid fire at 18 for 6 shots. Again, can be good, but probably not
restricted to a Royal Warden as well.
Yes. Sorry, I did forget to mention that the relic Gorse Blaster only comes on the Royal Warden. Probably not worth your relic slots, which I feel are fairly precious in this list, as there's quite a few that you often want to take.
It's definitely not just the Veil of Darkness anymore. There's some pretty cool stuff.
No. As I said, while I feel the Veil of Darkness will still be used an awful lot, I see that strat for 1 or 2 extra relics being used quite often too. And I don't know if we have mentioned that, but it seems to be the trend that's happening now that strat is 1 CP per extra relic, and the number of times you can use that strat is decided based on the size of your game.
Yeah, similar to
so
the Marine one.
2,000 point game, you can use it twice. I believe it's 1,000 points, you can use it once, and 3 times if you're doing a bigger game for whatever reason.
Yep.
So that is better than the previous 1 or 3 CP for 1 or 2 extra relics, which is quite good. And the Warlord trait does the same thing, I believe.
Yes, exactly the same.
The strat for Mefrit is in the shooting phase. You do mortal wounds on a 6+ to wound, but the big thing here is that it's maximum of 3. So, yes,
next.
you can use CP to do 3 mortal wounds. I read that at first. I thought, oh my god, 40 warrior shots or something like that, getting a shitload of mortal wounds. But
which Marine book did they learn that lesson from again? Was it?
Oh, it's the Salamanders, mate.
Yeah, the strat starts off reading so well, and then that last
Yeah, I
sentence
was
jumps off a
I was
cliff.
really excited about that. I'm like, oh yes, that's strat, and then I read the end.
Oh, that's
Um,
tragic.
so again, I feel that Effort's probably one of the weaker ones of the dynasties. But there is still some play in there. +1 AP at half range for a lot of your weapons can be quite good still.
Hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? Like it feels like if you're taking them for it, it's not that they're bad. It's that what are you giving up? Like there's so many
Yes.
other dynasties that
Yeah,
can work
no,
a similar
exactly.
archetype. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all opportunity cost, and I think the way 8th missions work, how they used to work compared to how 9th missions work now, where it's all about the objectives, it's all about surviving and staying on them. I
Yeah.
think you're passing up an awful lot to what some of this other stuff can do
Yeah.
if you take that.
100%. You don't need to kill stuff. Sorry, Nathan, to cut in, but you don't need to kill stuff to win anymore. Like you just may as well just boost your survivability and boost your movement.
Yeah, it feels like Mefrit has been left in 8th, whereas everything else has moved into 9th.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
So moving on to Nihilak. So again, I also feel this is one of the weaker ones. It starts so good in that the first part of its code is obsec for everything, which if you've looked at the internet any time in the last few weeks since it's been released, you've probably seen that everywhere. Unfortunately, the big problem here is that that's also one of the custom dynasties. And the second part of Nihilak is while you're wholly within your deployment zone, any unit wholly within your deployment zone treats AP -1 as AP 0. I like the premise of it. AP -1 to AP 0 is quite good, but the fact that you have to be wholly in your deployment zone and the way 9th missions work, has been pointed out just before, is that it really doesn't give you much. You want to be moving out, testing the middle of the board, and not really getting much from that part of the protocol.
Yeah, if it didn't have that caveat of the deployment zone, I think it would have play compared to the custom dynasties.
Yes,
but the
definitely.
fact it's almost counteracting what you need to do to have a chance of winning the game, which is like moving out. It's just not good.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel that that's best done with the combining the obsec with the custom dynasties. But the warlord trait. So the warlord trait is fight. If at the start of the fight phase, if the warlord was within engagement range of an enemy, it gets to fight first in that fight phase. Again, I feel that's a little bit lackluster. Obviously good, but you get to fight same time as charging models, and if you got charged, then you actually get to fight first because of the new 9th rules for combat. But getting that just on a single warlord, which even if you buff him up to be a big beat stick character, there's probably still better ways around doing that. The relic I feel also falls a little bit down in that you add 1 to armor saves and you get a 6-up feel no pain. Again, it's focusing on buffing up a single character, which doesn't seem to me to be the way that Necrons really want to play. But to me, the highlight of Hilak is the strat, which comes directly from the command protocols and is shoot while performing an action. And as we have touched on in the command protocols section, that can be very good.
Yeah, and the fact that you have it like on tap for Nihilak is actually kind of cool. Like you can do it like whenever you want, whenever it's crucial.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to predict it or use your switch in and out strat on trying to do that with Sudden Storm. And I think I did cover it earlier, but the protocol that Nihilak does double up is Eternal Guardian, which again I feel you can probably do without both halves of that one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, like we said before, there's some obvious strong ones. Lockie, you kind of covered the more niche, less direct power ones that have other options. We'll briefly cover the custom dynasties. The basic premise I understand is you get a primary and a secondary one. we probably won't have time to go through all of them, guys, but what stands out to you guys? I know the internet's talking about the OBSEC and 6-inch movement one, but are there any others that stand out to you, or if you want to talk about those two, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got one combo which I think might see play later on. So it's Radreathed, which is like the Skitarii Vanguard. So if you're in combat with me, you neg 1 toughness, and the Ancient Stir, which is +1 move to Canoptic and pile in on Consolidate 4 inches for Canoptic. So if you're running a Canoptic list, suddenly Scarabs are wounding like Marines on 4s and piling in, wrapping. I just think it's potentially got play there.
I quite like that one. That was actually the ones that I was going to call out as well.
Yeah, I agree.
They've got quite a bit of play in those ones there.
The only thing that sucks with Radreath is it doesn't affect vehicles, which is it'd be great if you could bring Knights down to T7, but
Well, that'd be a bit broken.
It would be a little bit broken. But I think because a lot of Necron units around that kind of awkward strength, like strength 6 or strength 4 or something like that, being able to bring down the toughness actually affects the win roll quite a lot in this book. So I agree, Ben.
One thing I guess I'd like to point out, since Ben stole my Radreathed and Ancient Stir one, is that you can actually do a lot of steal parts of a lot of the named dynasties. So you've got Unyielding, which gives the 6-up Invo Aid. You have Butchers, which is the +1 to charge roll. This is all from the primary ones. So you can do that if you want to combine that with, say, your 6-inch pre-game move, or if you're leaning heavily into Canoptic stuff, like Ben mentioned, the Ancient Stir for that 4-inch island and consolidate. So there is some play here. Personally, I feel that probably your Navok and that are better stuck with the primary ones, but again, it depends exactly on what you're running the list, and that's the good part of this codex, is that there is quite a lot of depth here to mix and match some of those named dynasties as well.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of the custom dynasties, there's no way to give them like the double directive treatment that the named ones have.
No.
Okay.
No, that's something you give up.
So that's definitely something that you'll fall out on.
I, for one, welcome our new OBSEC 16-inch robot overlords. I welcome them happily.
So yeah, let's quickly talk about that combo, because it's pretty oppressive, right? Like the stuff you can do with it, with bulk scarabs, with your Scorpex.
We'll keep out having 9 scarabs.
Full army OBSEC
that no one can possibly touch without killing them.
I mean, I know a little bit about it, but my army that does that has 24 models, Lucky, and it's full of gold. It's not like 27 scarabs. I'll hand it to Nathan, because I've seen you actually play this. Run me through how that typical archetype or typical game works.
So, incredibly forgiving in 9th edition, especially because I don't think the Necron units have been pointed to be objective secured, obviously, because in 90% of the combos they don't have that. But you throw that onto Lich Guard, as Lachlan mentioned, you throw that onto Scarabs, you throw that onto vehicles, you throw that onto anything. It buffs them immensely in the units. And then with the 6-up, I think the 6-up, the 6-inch scout move, up to 6-inch scout moves, once you know who's going first, incredibly adaptable, because there's no idea in 9th when you deploy who's going first or second, so you can use that to either be aggressive and hold the midfield, or if you're versing someone who's going to be aggressive themselves, you can fool them, let them measure, deploy on the line, and then just move 6 inches back. There's a lot to do with it.
As someone who has played around with Phantasm, the Eldar redeployment strategy, a lot, I feel that while it's not quite the same as moving 3 units from one side of the battlefield to the other, you can use a lot of the same things, and there's no CP costs. It's just, and everything you have gets it. So. All
right, that's Lockie's one mention of Eldar this recording.
If you count one in groups of 5, then yes, 1 mention.
Oh jeez.
So are there any generic relics or traits you guys like?
Yep, I'm a big fan of, as I said before, Thrall of the Silent King. I think, as I said, a lot of auras in this book that are definitely worth buffing. And then probably, we already mentioned the Veil of Darkness. It's it's a hit. Been a hit for a while. So I'll just mention the Orb of Eternity. Given how reanimation protocols work now, where they don't happen at the start of the turn anymore, they happen when the attacks happen. This lets you do the old reanimation protocols, and this allows it to happen instead of a 5-up. The normal res orb happens on a 4-up. I think the power in this is pretty obvious, and it goes from where it was in the previous codex of a 3-inch range to now a 6-inch range, which is a pretty big buff in distance.
It's also not restricted to core, so any unit with reanimation.
Yeah, and the fact that, this happens, it happens in your command phase, right? So you don't get to move your model into range to do it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that being 6 inches is very, very important, because it's hard to keep that going otherwise.
Considering I've been looking at taking that in almost all lists I've played, is there a regular res orb only 3, or is that also 6 now?
6 as well.
Oh, that's sick. That's sick, okay. Any others that stand out to you guys?
Enduring Will is always nice. The neg 1 damage on something like a Command Barge or Xerus or a Scorpec Lord. There's things that are likely to get hit by the 2-3 damage that just adds you extra wounds.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Immortal Pride took a bit of a hit.
Yeah, it was
It's
tragic,
no
wasn't
longer
it?
fearless. It's a 5 of feel no pain for the Warlord model, and ignore combat attrition for all core units within 6.
Yeah, look, I think it would have been too much, right? Like, if it was... I mean, it's kind of fearless because you don't take attrition tests. Like, you just lose one. But...
Well,
I feel
because of how morale works, it doesn't wipe the unit anymore, so I don't feel like the power is as much there as it was.
Yeah.
You'd lose your 1 for failing the test, but then you'd only ever lose extras on 1s. You'd never...
Oh, okay, sorry. So it doesn't stop the attrition test process. Okay.
No, it just ignores all modifiers.
Yeah. So yeah, it took a hit, but like you said, guys, like, morale's not as big a deal anymore, so...
The other Warlord trait I'm having a bit of a look at is the Honourable Combatant. So in the fight phase, each time a Warlord is selected to fight, it can engage in Honourable Combat. If it does, select one enemy character and add two attacks to the characteristic of this Warlord, but it can only make attacks against that enemy character. Fairly situational, given the way that you have to now specify Warlord traits on your list. That's a bit of a downside to it.
That's some Oracle shit, right?
If you are having a big beat stick character or something like that, this can be quite a big buff to wipe out your opponent's characters.
My Novoke itch is scratched a little bit by that, because with Scorpec Lords, you can, because you already get the double attacks when you're making the small sweeps, that takes him up to 12 attacks with that, which is nice. Or you can stack this with the Blood Scythe and get 9 attacks on an Overlord with the strat, which isn't too bad.
I think as you said...
You go ahead, Ben.
Sorry, I was about to say, I think as you said before, Nathan, there's a lot of beat stick units in the Codex. I think Necron cards are going to be more for your buffs and your synergies rather than swinging in, because they just... Yeah,
I feel the same. You can build some beat stick characters, but I feel that it's almost... it's not
counterproductive.
Yeah, it's counterproductive to do it, and it does take a bit of investment. You need that Warlord trait, you need your Void Reaper, your Blood Scythe, your Voltaic Staff, those kind of things to really do it. I guess that's probably a reasonable time to segue slightly.
To strats.
Can I add something a little bit about characters in particular here? So one of the big things I've been struggling a bit when playing with list ideas is the number of characters I actually take. I quite often think the way I build a list in general is I have a general theme that I want to go for, whether it's something like Silvertide or Silent King and Friends or something like that. I add the key units to it, I add the characters that need to buff it up, and then I add some cool stuff that I want to have in there as well. And one of the things I've been finding is that I'm quite often spending 25-30% of points of my list on these buff characters. I feel some of the biggest decisions you have to make in the list building section, and don't get me wrong, there's heaps of cool characters within this Necron Codex and characters that do really cool things, but some of the biggest decisions you have to make are which ones do you actually want to take in your list, because Otherwise, you can get to the point where you might as well just take more models that they're buffing, similar to with the Reanimator, rather than all these characters themselves. So, to me, things like the Royal Warden, which are quite cool, I feel fall into that trap a little bit, in that you're spending a lot of points on characters, and I find I'm, even with the whole Cryptech, able to take 2 Cryptechs in a single character slot. I'm finding that I'm running out of character slots rather than struggling to fill them.
Yeah.
So I guess, what would everyone else's thoughts be on that?
Oh, look, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, Nathan would probably agree totally. Like, how different is this to 8th edition? Like, Necron characters used to be the thing that would bug you so much because they're so expensive, but you needed them to fill detachments. Now it's like, oh my god, how many can I fit to be good without overtaxing? Because they're all so good, right?
Yeah, definitely attacks in 8th edition now. It's especially given how command pro work. You want to get as many as you can, but I think in terms of how, like, to build a list, I think some of the more interesting stuff now is the new Cryptex, and I think a lot of competitive lists will be taking at least I think 1 or 2 of these boys.
Yeah. And that's definitely a good spot to probably take a break, guys, because we've still got the strats, we've got the arcana, we've got the core unit changes and some list ideas and combos and secondaries to go off. But we'll take a short break and we'll be back, and you'll hear an ad from one of our sponsors. But hang tight, everyone.
Hey guys, Sal here at BGC. We've been trading on the south side of Brisbane since 2018, providing customers with A-grade products and gaming facilities. Since our establishment, we've strived to stock a diverse selection of products that can be hard to otherwise acquire locally. This includes fantastic brands such as Green Stuff World, Vallejo, Redgrass Games, ModiFX travel cases, Windsor & Newton, Chessex and Liquitex, to name a few. To find us on Facebook, simply search Brisbane Gaming Collective and hit that like button. You can also check us out at our online store, which is www.bgcollective.com.au. You're listening to The Normal Blokes.
Alright, and we're back for the second part of the Necron episode. Thank you for the listeners who've been tuning in. Like we said, it's going to be a bit of a mammoth episode. I guess in this second bit, we're going to talk about some strats, some unit changes, and some list ideas. So I guess we'll get straight into it. We got Ben, Lockie, and Nathan still with us. So we'll go just one at a time, just going into some strats. But Ben, what are some that stand out to you in the new Necron book?
So my 2, I guess, if I had to pick a couple, would be Eternal Protectors for the first one. So that's Dynasty Lich Guard, get an extra attack if they're within 3 inches of a noble. So I don't know about you guys, but when I played Lich Guard before, I always found that they were underwhelming on the offensive, just because they only had the 2 attacks. And the only way besides Amrakia to get them more was Zandrek's random D3 buff. So I just felt that they never really hit as hard as they should. But that when you stack it with the Navok, and they've got 3 attacks base now, like you're looking at 5-6 attacks there. So I think that's really good. But my favourite, and I think this is going to be one of those sort of gotcha moments for people that don't know or aren't aware of it, is the Prismatic Dimensional Breach. So it's a 1 CP strat that you can use to pull a Dynasty core unit from strategic reserves and place it next to a Night Scythe or Monolith. So you do that in the reinforcement step of the movement phase, so after the Monolith or Night Scythe moved, or Deep Strike. So you could Deep Strike a Monolith 9 inches away, and then bring Lich Guard in 3 inches, within 3 inches of the Monolith, for a 6-inch charge or a 5-up charge if you're Navok. Can't be used in the first battle round, but I think that's my favourite strat.
Yep, that's definitely a good way to put someone back into their deployment zone by hitting them with like 10 Lich Guard with that strat, right?
Yeah, given especially on the Night Scythe, where you can kind of like fly it sideways in the first turn, make it far away from everyone in the second turn, fly it to exactly the little point that you want, and then bring out pretty much any core unit that you want. I agree, Ben. If people aren't expecting that, they could really throw a spanner in the cogs.
Yeah, I really like it. I can't say how much I like that strat. I want to make Monolith work. I don't think I can do it, but it's It definitely helps.
Yeah, and like the clear winner here is the Night Side because it's such an easy thing to just fling at someone. But yeah, let's quickly talk about monoliths. So, didn't get much better, guys. What's the verdict?
Oh, I think it got a lot better, but that's like talking from like level -100 to like level 1 on a 100 to 100 scale. Like,
Yeah, like you can't polish a turd, right?
Yeah, it was so bad before. Like
As Liam said once, I'd rather start 300 points down than bring a monolith.
Like it got a lot better, like infinitely better, but it just doesn't quite work.
My issue is, well, as someone who didn't play Necrons previous to this, basically, is that they've fixed some of the problems, but then caused more with the whole movement to Lord of Warsport, taking away the fly. It's if they hadn't also caused those additional issues,
Yeah, if it was still heavy
would have
support,
would have had play, I feel.
yeah, the Lord of War hurts because you have to take either 3
Or 2 in the Silent King.
Yeah, and then you're losing CP, and it's half your army. Yeah, if it was still heavy support, I agree with you, Lockie. I think it would have play. But...
Yeah, because if you could bring one along, and for things like this strat, and there is some cool things that they can do, and they've definitely gotten a lot better than they were, but not quite there yet.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to derail the strats conversation. Keep going, Benny.
Yeah, they're my probably 2 biggest ones. I mean, I like the Aetheric Interception, the Death Mark strat, mainly because it took the intercept ability from the Death Mark off their data sheet, but they made it so that they don't have to deep strike. So their guns got a lot better, so they can be just sat at the top of a ruin somewhere, and anyone that deep strikes within 36 inches is just going to get their head blown off. But yeah, I might throw it over to Nathan or Lockie and see what they like on the look of.
You can go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, cheers, Lockie. Mine are 2 really unit-specific ones. As I said, really love Novoke, and 2 of the units I used a lot were Scorpec Destroyers, the ones that came in the Dominus box, and the Wraiths. So, really cool one. Enslaved Protectors, not only Wraiths, but Spiders and Scarabs get this. At any point in the opponent's charge phase, you can heroically intervene as if they were a character. Given the oppressiveness that will be Obsec Scarab, I think it's going to be pretty potent being able to heroically intervene with those units, given how much smaller the board is and given how much of a footprint some of those can optically take up.
Mate, that's beautiful. Like your 6-inch pre-game moving Obsec, 5-up Invo thrown on Scarabs can now heroic. That's glorious.
Definitely. And then the other one with the Scorpec Destroyers, Whirling Assault, just a reactive, -1 wound in any phase. It's kind of pretty easy to say, especially at the toughness 5, which is a pretty good level, being able to just -1 wound at any point, counteract stuff like Vets. And then for armies that don't have that easy access to +1 wound, it can really throw a bad time for them.
Well,
it means Marines are wounding on like 6s now.
Yeah, it essentially halves the number of wounds that goes through, going from 5s to 6s.
And especially when you have the new unit like the Chronomancer, which gives them the 5-up Invo reroll charges, and then they can make themselves -1 when you've had a unit that hit pretty hard, but it was a glass cannon, to now like a very durable unit to go along with the raids.
I love the fluff description in that strat. I'll just read it for you guys. Scorpec Destroyers corrom into battle with a spiraling gate that allows them to deflect enemy shots with their whirling blades. So you've just got this mental image of them just spinning and just like bolts dinking off their swords and stuff.
Yeah, they're just going full Beyblade as they roll in.
Yeah, 100%.
Not gonna lie, the initial images of those models were one of the key reasons that I have picked up Necrons for 9th.
The fact that they got a 5-point cut as well, pretty. They're definitely one of the big winners, I think, of this codex. And like a unit is now that they can be taken in 6. The punch is definitely there.
Yeah. Well, I had a unit of 3 when I was playing before the codex. Pick up a 10-man Terminator squad, 10-man Grey Knight Terminator squad. Ridiculous.
What the hell?
Yeah. 3 with the plasma sight just came in and just picked the whole squad up.
I'm trying to do the maths on that, and that shouldn't work, but I can't believe it did. That's incredible.
Now, and just a quick note, that plasmide is now a different unit, but just has some cool coherency stuff just to keep up with those models. And there's some little movement tricks you can do with it, because it doesn't. It just has to stay within 6. Mm-hmm. So even if you want to, and it now does its buff in the charge or fight phase. So if you want to buff up your Scorpack destroyers, they run off, make their charge, but just stay close enough, you can leave that plasmide on an objective or something.
Oh, that's.
It means you don't have to worry about it for blast as well.
No.
Like you can take the 5-man squad instead of 4 and 1 plasma sight.
Yeah, that's actually very cool. I was going to move on to next. Are there any other strats you guys want to cover before we continue?
I was going to briefly cover the 2 main vehicle strats.
Yeah, go for it.
Quantum Deflection, which is a 4-up invo save for anything that has quantum shielding, which is most of the vehicles. But for me, the key one that you use that one on is your Catacomb Command Barge. I feel it's quite
Well,
good
what's
there.
quantum shielding now? Look, I don't think we've covered it yet.
There you go. So quantum shielding has changed from the whole you have to roll the damage. It is now at base a 5-up invo save and a permanent transhuman. So wound rolls of unmodified wound rolls of 1, 2, and 3 automatically fail. And this strat increases that invo save up to a 4+, which is quite good.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's really nice.
I think also given, like, I played a couple of lists back in 8th where there were sort of like all those quantum shielding vehicles. I think this kind of makes it a bit more challenging. I think it's an improvement just because before, like, obviously Melter wasn't going to do the job, but like autocannons would just rip through them.
Bolters would rip through them.
On the 4-up
Whereas
side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like stuff like mass 1 damage is still going to get it done, but I think, like, given they're all T6, those like strength 7, 2 damage sort of things, they've taken a bit of a nerf now against this.
It's changed from the haha, your Knight Harpoon Cannon can't ever touch me, but your auto cannons destroy me, to a lot more consistent thing, which I feel, along with the, again, reanimation protocols, as we covered earlier, is quite a good improvement from previous codex to this one.
Yes, for sure.
And the other strat I briefly wanted to touch on was the Curse of the Pharaon. So whenever a Necron vehicle in your army is destroyed, do not roll to see if that model explodes. It does so automatically. And Titanic models cost 3 CP, otherwise it costs 1 CP. We all have probably been in that situation, whether on the receiving end or doing it to someone else. At some point we're like, I really want this to explode. In the middle of their army or something like that. We've got that for our Necron vehicles, which I think is, again, situational but quite good.
Well, you want to know who is a vehicle who isn't Titanic and explodes for D6 wounds within 2d6?
Go for it.
Your boy, the Silent King.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. I don't know how I feel fluff-wise exploding the Silent King, but...
Yeah, like, one 3 CP strat, explode your Warlord.
Well, no, it's
one
1
CP
CP.
strat.
He's not Titanic, so 1 CP.
But you can still use it on him?
Yes, he is a vehicle.
Oh, never mind. That's fucking insane. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think they're the main strats. I mean, obviously, guys, we haven't covered all the strats here. We'd be here for weeks. But I think they're the main ones. I mean, like, flayed ones have a neg 1 to hit strat and a fight twice strat. But, yeah. Ignore Invo for Catan that aren't the Nightbringer who has it naturally.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like you said, Ben, like we just wanted to give our overview on some of these strats, and we've covered the main ones. It is a big book, so we can't spend 4 hours going through it. But we're actually up to my favourite bit here, the core unit changes, some of the new units, and what's changed from the old units. But all right, what core units? Now we didn't get as good a treatment for core units as Marines, but we still got some cool stuff. So Ben, what's core?
So you got your Warriors, Immortals, Deathmarks, Lichguard, and Tombblades. So just the 5, but that's all we really need.
Yeah, well, if the army's it's like 80 Necron Warriors, I think we're good, right?
Yeah, the big thing for me here is that Lichguard and Tombblades are core. So like a lot of abilities proc off core. Xerx's buff ability, like augmentation, is off core now, so you can get T6 Lichguard if you're lucky. T6 Tombblades, like yeah. I mean, we got nowhere near as much as Marines, but then no one's ever going to get as much as Marines. But I think we got everything we needed with those changes.
Yeah, and
I
it's
think
nice.
Fluff-wise, it makes sense as well, because like in terms of how the Necrons work, like the Destroyer cult is kind of they're outliers with the rest of everything. It would be stupid if the vehicles got it, and then also the Canop deck are like AI servants. So I think it is a bit restrictive, but it does feel like correct with how the book is. And then those Canoptic and Destroyer cult units, they get their own buffs through different parts of the book.
Yeah,
a lot of the strats seem to focus around, especially those Canoptic units, as you covered earlier.
Yeah, and it does seem like, yeah, you're exactly right, Nathan. Like, they have their own ways to get their buffs, not just through, like, core rerolls and things like that. I also like how, you know, like Ben said, we've got stuff like Tombblades that can get bonuses for core, so you can buff them up, send them off, and do their own thing. It's really quite cool.
Yeah, I think it's, as Nathan said, it's a bit restricted, but it's no more than we need for the core rules.
Yeah. Moving on from that, we've got individual units, unit entries. I guess we'll start with the Silent King. I know, Ben, you've been very excited to put this card together. I'll let you do it, Ben, actually. Hit us with the rules for Silent King, and just a quick overview on what he does, and even for players who are playing against the Necrons, what you should look out for him.
Yeah, so this is probably going to take about 10 minutes, guys. So, it's a lot of So obviously he's the big boy of the Codex. He's 450 points, which puts him just below sort of Magnus and Morty sort of level. So I think it's pretty appropriately costed, because he doesn't hit as hard, but he does a lot more for your army. So he's got the classic character stats: hits on 2s, toughness, strength 5, toughness 7, 16 wounds on himself. But then he's also got the 2 triarchal Menhirs, which basically act as bodyguards for him. So the whole unit's got a 4-up invo. It's all T7. The Menhirs have 5 wounds, so it's a 26 wound unit. The Menhirs have to be taken first. So when you take wounds on the unit, they have to be allocated to the Menhirs first. Which is cool, because it means that nothing in the unit is over 18 wounds. So your terrain interactions, like, he can be obscured, unlike your knights and stuff. He has a bucket load of attacks. So the Menhirs each have the heavy one, 36-inch range, strength 12, neg 4, 6 damage flat, and just fuck you beams. His scepter is assault 3, strength 8, neg 2, 2 damage. Then he's got his 2 little buddies, the Pharaoh of the Blades and Pharaoh of the Stars. The Stars gives you an extra strength 9, strength 6, neg 2, 1 damage shots at 24 inches as well. And the Pharaoh of the Blade gives you extra attacks in melee. So at full wounds, the Silent King himself has 6 attacks at strength 9, neg 3, 2 damage. He then gets an extra 4 attacks at strength 8, neg 4, 3 damage. And then an extra 3 attacks at strength 5, neg 2, 1 damage. So at full wounds, he's chucking out 13 attacks in melee. But that's kind of like secondary to what he does for your army. So first up, he can deny a power. He has obeisance generators, which just sounds cool. That means that every enemy unit within engagement range of the king himself, not the Menhirs, but the king, until the end of the phase, cannot fight until all other eligible units from your army has done so. So that's slightly different to other ones, so you can still interrupt here, but still really cool, because it's not pick a unit, it's everything he's in combat with. He's got reroll all hit with ranged weapon for core and Praetorian units within 6, reroll all wound rolls for core and Praetorians within 6. He's got the Relentless March for the +1 move. He uses My Will Be Done twice. As we mentioned already, he can swap out your command protocol for the one you didn't use or the ones you didn't use. And when he explodes on a 4-up for 2d6 range, d6 mortal wounds. So he's really cool. The other thing here, guys, is that as he does degrade, he does lose some of his rules. So it's like Fluffy that the two other members of the Triarch kind of turn off to keep him powered up. So if he has 8 or fewer, you lose the reroll to hit and shooting and the extra shots. And then once he's below 4 wounds, you lose the reroll to hit, reroll to wound and melee, and the extra melee attacks. So, on the whole, I think he's awesome. Definitely not an auto include, but I don't think anything in this book is. But definitely got play.
Yeah. And it's cool to see like you compared him to Morty and Magnus, Ben. We're seeing more of these kind of centerpiece units, like the sisters have the Triumph of St. Catherine, which I think is a pretty cool model and cool unit, and it kind of has those same buffing auras, and at the same note, when it takes damage, it loses some of them. It's cool to see that interaction in the game.
Yeah, look, the model is just flat out just amazing as well, like the Enchained Catan, and as you read the fluff, it explains the two little guys that sit with him, and the Catan, and that his cloak is actually the flensed necrodermis of that Catan, and that's just like I was just waiting to see at the bottom of his rules, just flensed necrodermis. This model can only take 4 wounds a turn.
I think
it's not there, don't worry.
600
but
points if he did that, at least.
Yeah, it's not there, but I was just waiting for it. It's just awesome. It's so good to see units that create synergies in Necrons. That was the big thing that they fluffed with in 8th. Like, the characters didn't interact with your units very well, but now there's just so many different things that synergize really well. And the Silent Kings are a really big part of a lot of my lists.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Ben. Yeah, 100%.
I second that, Ben. On top of the fact that he's an awesome-looking model.
So many pieces. So many.
I haven't started. I haven't even got mine yet. I'm still waiting to pick that up. But I think they've done a really good job of setting his power level and points cost at such that there's so many ways you can use him. But if you look at a Necron list that doesn't have him, you don't automatically think that's a trash list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wait, Ben, how many dollary dues was your boy the Silent King?
Yeah, 250.
250 if you pay full RRP.
Oh my goodness.
Which I did because I wanted him straight away.
I was a bit tight with my money there and decided to order him from
I think you covered it
second retailer.
really, really well there, Ben. I'll just mention one or two things. One, his vehicle, as we mentioned before, with the big auto explode, but also there's 1 CP straight in the book in your command phase to let him act at full profile, which is nice if you're moving, attacking at that same rate.
Hey, if you...
And the spider can also heal him as well, or the cloak tech, if they're Zarakan.
Hey
and
guys.
then I think...
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say quickly. Oh fuck! Never mind. I forgot my point. You guys keep going.
I'll just finish off here. If you like command protocols, this is where you go. This is the guide that turns them from like a cool buff to something you can really build around.
Yeah, because he has to be your warlord because he's a Silent King, so it means you get the double up on your picking, and then he has the voice of the tribe, which lets him change one to one of the 2 you haven't picked now. It just adds so much more to them.
That's what I was going to say, guys. So if you use the strat for him to act at full profile, does he get his auras back that he's lost?
No.
Ah, damn.
it's about the wounds remaining, not the profile.
I see. Okay.
I'm not sure about that, Nathan. Let me just check.
So the wording
sure about that either.
Yeah, the wording of preservative auto torpor is if Zerak is 8 or fewer wounds remaining, it cannot make
Nathan is right.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah,
it's purely around the wounds remaining, which I saw that and got a little bit sad, but I think there's a lot to be happy about.
Very true. Alright, so I think objectively good, not an auto include. Pretty well covered there, guys. The next one, my boy from 8th edition, Nemesis Zandarek. So, still South-Tech character, obviously, very similar stat line, but some of his abilities have changed. Lucky, I'll let you cover that if you want.
Yep. Although Ben, did you want to take that one, since I believe you are looking at including
Oh, yeah,
him in one
okay.
of your lists?
Yeah, so the biggest change for me for Zandrek is actually his name's completely changed. He's no longer Nemazor Zandrek, he's actually Robot Decked. So he still has the Overlord profile, the My Will Be Done, the Relentless March, but his counter tactics is the big one. So this is a once per battle ability. When your opponent declares they will use a stratagem during a battle round, but before any command points are spent, this model says no, basically. The strat is not used, the CP is not spent. It also clarifies that you can't be used this battle round, so you can't try and use... Ooh, that's really good. So you can't use like a +1 to hit in shooting and then again in the melee.
Yep.
There's no roll.
Holy
there's
shit,
no,
that's so good.
There's no nothing. It's just Sandrek says no.
Oh my goodness. So like if I try and Tanglefoot in the movement phase, I can't do it in the charge phase either if he gets vectored.
Yeah. The thing I see like this, like thinking of the way the book's going to work for me, or my army's going to work, is like stopping like that fight twice or shoot twice that will wipe a Necron unit before I can use the Orb of Eternity to get 2/3 of them back. Like, that's the way I see it using. I mean, we all know how powerful Vex is as the whole, but the fact there's just no roll, there's no nothing, it's just no.
Yeah, wow.
His Transient Madness has always also changed the D3 buff. So it's a Sautic core unit within 9. You roll 3d6, and if you roll less than leadership, so it's not a leadership test, it's rolling less, so 9 on 3d6, you can pick instead of doing the d3 roll. If you fail that leadership test, you still do the d3 roll, which is +1 attack, +1 ballistic skill, or reroll charge. But just that, 40% of the time, you're going to be able to just pick that.
Yeah, that's
So it's
nice.
also different to My Will as well, because My Will is +1 to hit rolls. This is +1 ballistic skill. So I know I'm not sure there is much in the Codex that hits on a... I don't think there's anything that hits on a 4 that you can buff to a 2 there, but it's just another way of, if you have a neg 1 to hit, still hitting on 2s with warriors.
Yeah, you can go move heavy weapons on infantry and not care.
Well, you've got some of those strats that we were talking about earlier, of the fallback and still shoot with a neg 1.
Yeah, the command protocol.
Very true. Yeah, so that's that. Now, something that, Ben, you've been telling me for a while that's going to be out of control is Praetorian. So they got a solid buff in their rules. Actually, Nathan, do you want to cover this bit?
Yeah, I'll take this one off Ben's hands.
I need a breather, thanks.
Is your back getting sore from carrying this podcast, Ben?
That's it. Well, I don't want to get him injured.
Yeah, doing it for years, mate.
So these guys have moved from, I'm going to say, a pretty crowded elite slot to now being in the fast attack, which is pretty nice. I think they were just a bit out of fashion in 8th, just given everything was 1 damage and there was some better options. But I think now they're really quite good. So just inherently, they're 25 points. They're a 3-up ballistic skill, 3-up weapon skill, strength 5, T5, 2 wound. And there's 2 weapon options, but I'll probably just cover I'm going to probably say of all the war gear choices in the book, this is probably the one with the clear superior option. The Rod of the Covenant, so a 12-inch assault 1, strength 5, neg 3, 2 damage shot, or that same profile in melee with its 3 attacks. Given it moves 10 inches because it has fly and it's infantry, I think we all know the value of infantry in 9th edition, especially fast-moving infantry and especially durable infantry.
Yes.
And given how the Silent King's buffs work, where it's Necron Core or Triarch Praetorians, if you're running the Silent King, it's definitely not a bad choice to run.
They're almost like the personal
as well.
They're almost like the perfect skirmishers. They move quick. They've got good shooting. They're perfect marine killers.
Yep.
And they also have that combination of living metal and reanimation protocols. So, because they've only got that 2 wounds, like, it's not hard to get them back, and then that one that was damage heals, and it's just, makes me happy.
They're definitely quite strong.
Yeah, and I think that buff of their combat weapon is huge, right? Like, it does, like you said, make them such a threat to things that are in the meta at the moment. And getting the full rerolls from the Silent King, like, as well as, let's say you get charged by something, Silent King turns them off, then all your Praetorians go into bat. Like, it's very, very cool.
They've also got that strat for +1 to hit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Damn.
Yeah.
So in combat, 10 of these guys are putting out 30 attacks at ballistics, weapon skill 2, strength 5 without any buffs, -3, 2 damage with reroll to wounds if they're near the Silent King. That'll pick up 10, 15 intercessors any day of the week.
Yeah. And they are dynastic agents, aren't they? So they don't benefit from any things. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so you're never going to get these obsec guys, but I think these are like your scalpel in your lists.
Yeah.
Going where they need to go to put the hurt on.
Yeah, imagine if these guys got that pre-game 6-inch move. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I guess the next thing is Scarabs. Now we covered a little bit about Scarabs. They got a little bit of a boost in terms of their wounds and stuff, and their combat power, I guess, changed to 6s to hit auto wound. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, because it used to be 5s to wound anything in the game, but now that's changed that, which is quite nice. You're obviously going to see some Scarabs around with being obsec and things, but anything you guys want to add to that?
Just
I think these guys have a nice... Sorry, you go, Lockie.
It's the fact that for 15 points per Scarab Swarm, 4 wounds, moving 10 with fly, getting that 6-inch pre-game move, obsec, large, low profile, but large base size, meaning that you can use them to screen out objectives, and you can also sit them behind a ruin to be hidden very easily.
Dude, oh man. I've definitely hidden Scarabs behind like a little barricade against like Marines, right? Because they're just so small.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure we played a game once, Dineeth, where you hid Scarabs behind Nurgling bases.
That sounds about right.
They're basically the ultimate 9th edition unit when it comes to the fact that they've got ream. Yes, they got 4 wounds, so the ream is a bit harder, but when you're killing, if you kill 5 or 6 of them, you might get 1 or 2 of them back. And again, when you're only paying 15 points for each of these bases, that can get ridiculous quite quick. I've seen some math hammer somewhere, but the number of shots needed from basic bolters to actually take this unit out is ridiculous. Somewhere up in the range of 100. Although don't fact check me on that, but it's quite high.
Yeah,
it's just the fact you can max them out at 27 for 405 points or something ridiculous like that, or 450 points.
135 points for a squad of 9.
So it's 405 points, and you've got what, 27 by 4 wounds. You got nearly
108 wounds.
Yeah, 108 wounds. That are T3, so that's better than most swarms. They're moving stupid quick.
And the way they synergize well with some other parts of the list. For example, the Cryptek with the Canoptic Control node gives them +1 hit, and also with the Cryptek Arcana Failsafe Overcharge, you can give them an additional attack. And then also in Protocol of the Hungry Void, you can give them an additional strength. So you can make a unit of 9 hit with 45 attacks hitting on 3s that is actually strength 4. And especially if you're taking something like Nova, you can give them AP as well. So there's a lot of room for them to be buffed, but even at their base profile, they do so much for the missions.
And your favourite unit, Nathan, the Spiders bring 1 back a turn anyway. Yeah.
Oh my god. Love the Spiders.
Yeah, go on, do your spider thing.
Yeah, let's lean into the Spiders. Yeah.
Yeah, you've already had your turn with Silent King, then let Nathan have his go.
I'll be... Thankfully, the data sheet for the Canoptic Spiders is a little shorter than the Silent King. But I think these guys, especially given how good Scarabs are in that OBSEC dynasty, Canoptic Spiders have gone from being on everyone's grey sprues to how can I get them? They're out of stock. How can I get 3 right now? They're 60 points. They move 6. They have fly. They have 4 up weapon skill, ballistic skill. Their strength, toughness 6, but they're now 6 wounds, 5 attacks. They've had a big buff in combat. Now they're base hitting on strength 8, 3, 2 damage, which kills stuff like Marines pretty well. Oof. And then they have, and as Lockie mentioned, the Scarab Hive ability in your command phase, 1 destroyed model from each friendly Scarab Canoptic unit within 6 inches of this unit is reanimated. So basically, one spider unit gives back 3 scarabs if you have 3 units. So they're already given their points back pretty quickly. But their war gear, I think, is also pretty interesting because, as Ben mentioned before, they can be given a fabricated claw array, which heals vehicles within 3 dynasty vehicles. So if you take a Zerakan, you can heal the Silent King. They can be given a Gloom Prism, which is basically a deny for 5 points, which I think is like ridiculous to have on a non-character unit for 5 points. And then last but not least, the Particle Beamers, which is give 3 spiders 30 points, 6 Particle Beamers, you're toting 36 Strength 5 shots from 3 models. And as we were saying before, there's a lot of Canoptic buffs in the book. Leave home with a Technomancer with a failsafe Overcharger Arcana for the plus D3 attacks on Canoptic Spiders because they're a monster unit. And then also the +1 hit. Those puppies will tear down a bunch of horde stuff in shooting and then really tear stuff at combat. So
these guys are... Sorry, Nathan. I was going to say, these guys are hitting like Talos now. Like, it's insane.
And the fact that you can give them the 5-up invo from the Chronomancer as well. The amount of synergies that can go into these guys and the amount they give to those big swarms of Scarabs, I think if you're going to go Scarabs, I think taking Canoptic Spiders is definitely a good decision as well.
Just doing some quick math in my head. You can take 9 Spiders, 9 Scarabs, and a Technomancer for about 1,000 points. Sorry, 27 Scarabs, 9 Spiders, and a Technomancer for about 1,000 points.
Wow.
Chuck in 18 rates for 630 points and then do what you want with the last 300 points and you, I think you've got a pretty good army there.
Just, maybe add a single gun to that and you might be alright. But I guess on the Canoptic train, rates got a bit of a shake up, like their invo changed and things like that. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
They got fall back and charge again, so I'm happy.
Yeah, they kept their cool thing.
Also, you can get them to 10 attacks each now with whip coils and the +1 attack. So,
shit. So what are whip coils now, Ben?
So whip coils are strength user, so strength 4, neg 1 damage, but make 2 attack rolls for each attack. So, I mean, they went to ballistic skill, weapon skill 4, but you can buff that back up with the Technomancer. Like, a lot of people, I think, saw this and were like, everything's bad. But then you remember it's 9th edition, and you've got a 12-inch move T5 unit with 3 wounds that has a 4-up invo, and you're like, oh yeah, I can make this obsec now, and all the objectives are mine. Yeah, I think they're really good.
It's not going to be many things you're not clearing off with the unit of rates off an objective, and then you've got 3 to 6 T5, 4-up invo save, 3 wound obsec units sitting on that objective. There's not much that's going to take that off.
Yeah, from what I've
even
found,
if they do, they're going to have to dedicate a lot of resources to do so.
They're just that awkward profile where the T5, so bolters aren't going to do it easily, but they've also got a 4-up, so las cannons aren't going to do it easily. It's just that awkward profile to deal with.
Yeah, and all you need is like a dynasty like Novok to just push the maths on these guys in combat, and then they just start to blow things out that they shouldn't really be killing, which is kind of cool. Alright guys, so we've covered some pretty cool stuff. We've covered some cool changes now. Time for some doom and gloom with the Doomstalkers and Doomsday Arcs, guys. So, what do you guys think? Doomstalkers, everyone reckons they're pretty saucy, they got a lot of damage. What's everyone's thoughts? I'll start with you, Benny. Oh, actually, no, Lockie, hit it, man.
I haven't had a chance to have a rant yet. So, I initially saw a lot of the hype around the Necron Codex and the Doomstalkers, and a lot of people were saying they were good. And when you look at what they do for 140 points in a vacuum, that's pretty good. But the issue I have is 9th edition. Just with the changes to the terrain density, these guys can't really move and still shoot. Obviously they can, but then they have to shoot their Doomsday Blaster on low power, which is then only 24 inches, strength 8, neg 2, D3 damage. as opposed to the high power option, which is the one you really want for the strength 10, neg 5, d6 damage. I just feel you can have a trio of these guys. You also need a Technomancer, which then adds roughly 30 points if you have a trio of them to the cost. When you're looking at 170 points for these things, that at best will be our sit and cover a single firing lane if your board happens to have that. It's not great. There's a lot of other things that you can do for those points that will help you win a lot more games in 9th edition, I feel.
I 100% agree with you, Lockie. It's been the problem I've had with Doomsday Arcs since they're in induction, I guess. Like, yeah, heavy D6 damage sounds great, but when you've got 3 of them and you roll 5 shots and you realise it's 100 points a shot, and then 3 of them miss, and then the other ones don't wound, or they've got an invo save, it's just not reliable enough.
Yeah, when you've got D6 shots, even forgetting all the line of sight terrain issues, D6 shots, D6 damage, hitting on a 4. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of that. Again, you can buff them up with Technomancer, but that's a 90-point Technomancer that you've then got to take.
The way I'd fix these is change it to heavy 3 plus D3 or D3 plus 3 damage like they did the Doomsday.
Yeah.
If they did that or did both, if you had a heavy heavy D3 plus 3 with D3 plus 3 damage, then they'd actually be
really good.
But your Doomsday Arc, like, it went up in points in 9th, and it's just not like. Yeah,
we started with the Doomsday Arc is even worse than the Doomstalker. If you do really want that backfield shooting unit, Doomstalker is still a reasonable option for that, but I feel that that's not playing the way 9th edition is meant to be played anymore. It doesn't really work.
It does have a cool strat though, where if one of your characters are killed, the Doomstalker can immediately shoot it at 1+ to hit. But I agree, if you were playing on boards with no obscuring terrain, sure, Optic Doomstalker would be great, but I completely agree with you guys. Probably one of the things Necrons do really poorly is long-range shooting, and I don't think you should be trying to make up for that weakness. I think you should be pouring more resources into making the strength stronger.
Oh, can we just briefly touch on the gotcha of the century when you charge a immortal unit that's within 6 inches of 3 Doomstalkers and you cop Overwatch from the wall?
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing we didn't mention there that is a pretty cool ability is the Sentinel Construct. Each time an enemy unit declares a charge against a friendly unit within 6 inches of this model, unless this model is within engagement range of any models, this model can fire Overwatch at the charging unit as if it were also the target of the charge. This is in addition to any other units that are firing Overwatch. And each time this model fires Overwatch, it makes attacks with Doomsday Blaster using the high power profile. So yes, it can, if you charge something within 6 inches of it, you can get a massive gotcha and, hey, look, you've got 3 of them firing at you and probably vaporizing pretty much anything that just charged.
Yeah, but it's still only hitting on 6s, and the way I read that,
shots.
It doesn't tell. I don't think that's clear enough to say whether you need to use the CP to fire it or not. I think that needs an FAQ.
I personally thought it didn't need the CP. It says it can fire Overwatch but yeah, it does say as if
if it was a target of a charge, and everything that's a target of a charge needs to use the Overwatch strat, which you can then only use once per phase. So then you're not going to get all 3.
You don't have 3 of them, and you're probably shooting.
I think the intention is that you can use it without the CP, but rules as written, that needs an FAQ before.
I think regardless, it's 10.5 shots from 3, which is less than 2 hits. So I think that's from all 3. So I think it's it looks a bit better than it actually is in practice.
Yeah, that's actually very true.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. But there's one more, I guess, group of units I want to cover before we finish up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Catan.
Oh, tell us how you really feel.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to go out and say I don't think the Catan are as auto-take as the internet seems to think. And before you crucify me, because Nathan almost unfriended me when I first said that to him, I'll explain why. So let's go with the Nightbringer, because that's the one that everyone seems to be erect over. Look, it's definitely an awesome unit. Like, in a vacuum, it will kill anything it touches. It hits the hardest. It's pretty cool. Like, it's what the Nightbringer should be. But when you take it out of that vacuum and you look at it as 350 points of something that only moves 8 inches, can't advance and use its Catan powers, like, I don't think it's worth the cost, personally. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think you said it best when we were talking prior to this. I 100% agree with you. And to me, 350 points to sit and guard at best 2 objectives. Most maps only 1 is not going to be great. And any decent player that you play against, yeah, they'll have to put in a little bit of effort to play around it, but they're not going to let you hit anything super valuable. And it's got a maximum threat range for charging a turn of 20 inches. That's not that big, and they can move around that very easily.
I think also a lot of lists at the moment interact in at least 2 phases. Like, we're past the part of the meta where it's just tower just going to try and kill you in the shooting phase. We're not seeing a whole lot of tower anymore. I think most armies can interact in the shooting and combat phase, and as you said, you'll probably be able to make sure as a half decent player that the Nightbringer trades down, and given his role is to kill stuff. I have gone from almost unfriending Ben to agreeing with him here. I think that 350 points is spent better in 9th edition missions on pretty much any of the other obstech stuff in the book, because these guys don't get dynastic codes or command protocols.
It's 20 immortals with 10 points left over. That's how I convinced Nathan. It's just, yeah, it's awesome and it's great. It ignores invos and it ignores feel no pains and stuff. But any good player is just going to feed you a squad of guardsmen a turn, and you're not going to get to do fuck all.
Yeah, it's also 10 Wraiths or 10 Scorpec Destroyers. To me, those units are pretty good in combat as well. Kill a lot of things, not quite as well as a Nightbringer, obviously, but the fact you have 10 of them, multiple squads, move all over the place, have the OBSEC, have the command protocols, all that type of thing.
And we're focused on the Nightbringer here, guys, but it's a thing that all the Catan share for me. I mean, the Void Dragon is probably the coolest model G-Dub's ever released, but it just 350 points is too much.
Nice.
I agree.
Yeah, look, that's really good conversation, guys. I mean, it's easy to look at a model like the Nightbringer that appears to break all the core rules of, durability that's built up a lot of armies in Ninth, and then you look at it going, oh my god, it can one-hit this, it can one-hit that, and then you actually look at the practicality of it being like, for 3 to 5 turns of the game, 3 out of 5 turns of the game, it's probably going to be inactive. And then wouldn't you rather something that actually does something? And exactly like you guys said, a good player will just feed it like 10 Guardians or 10, Guardsmen a turn.
Yeah, it's great. He can kill Gazgul in a turn, but he's going to have to spend 5 turns going through
all the boys and
boys.
Yeah.
And then the game ends and he's killed 60 boys.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, and that's a really good point to, I guess, end this discussion with, is the Necrons have so many tools to actually play the missions so well. Like, you don't even need that. you may as well just push hard to get your primary and get your secondary, right? But
yeah. But don't hate us for not liking the Nightbringer.
You'll see our listeners going down by like 140%.
Yeah, we hope you still have listeners after this.
It's okay, mate. We're too far down the episode. No one gets to the end anyway. But I guess we'll finish off. What are some list ideas you guys have been throwing around? I know we've mentioned Silvertide, we've mentioned options with, a Canoptic heavy list. I'll give each of you guys, one idea you want to talk about, starting with Ben, then Lockie, then Nathan. Hit it, Ben. What combos and ideas are you looking at? And particularly for that list, what secondaries are you looking at for the missions?
So whenever I'm building a list, I always look at what secondaries I'm taking. I think if you're not building a list with at least 2 secondaries in mind, you're planning to fail. So my first idea was the, I'm ashamed to say, pre-game move and OBSEC for everything. And it's basically a core of 20 shield guard, which move into the middle of the table with Pharaon Overlord with the Orb of Eternity, and Zandrek. Not Zandrek, sorry, Xeris, who can make them T6 if I get lucky. Who can res each a model per unit because he can do it twice, and then just the Canoptek fast stuff scattered around. So 10 Wraiths, 18 Scarabs. And then some small deep striking units, so some flayed ones, maybe some death marks, some cryptothralls for deploy scramblers. So that sort of list is looking at deploy scramblers, engage on all fronts, and then I usually leave that third one kind of open, just because it's more dependent on what I'm playing against. Like if something's taking Slacker heavy, it's Abhor the Witch. If it's character heavy, Assassinate. But that was my first idea. That what I've listed there is about 1,700 points, so it's still a little bit of work to play with. I'm just trying to figure out how I want to fill that out. But yeah, that sort of core obsec that sits in the middle and goes, "You're not moving me," and then the fast wraiths to just obsec you off, or wraith and scarabs to just obsec you off all the other objectives.
Yep, nice. All right, what about you, Lockie? What are you looking at the moment with your multiple Indominus boxes?
So I've got a bit of a similar idea to what Ben had. I'm looking at running my friend the Silent King, 20 Lich Guard, 20 Warriors, a Chronomancer, 2 lots of 5 Scorpec Destroyers, and 2 lots of 9 Scarabs. So this sort of plays into my thinking is that I was playing around with list which had a whole heap of characters. This list does not. Yes, it does have some weaknesses that you lose your command protocols as soon as the Silent King dies, and you only have the 2 characters for providing that buff. But the trade-off for that is I have a whole heap more stuff on the table that's actually units doing stuff, able to do objectives, secondary objectives, and things like that. That's a fair few models, fairly durable to actually get through. It's still a relatively new idea. I've also, similar to what Ben suggested, I've played around with removing something to try and include zeros, be able to res the 2 Lich Guard squads as they take each turn. Obviously, this is basically Silent King and the Elites detachment. So it still starts with 12 CP, which is reasonable. I'd probably spend a couple on Warlord traits or relics. And the main thing I'm playing around with as well is trying to put in something like a couple of squads of Crypto Thralls to be able to do those easy secondary objectives like deploy scramblers. As I said, the main play I see with this list is the fact that, as I said, Silent King plus Lich Guard push forward to the middle of the table. It's the obsec plus 6-inch move dynasty. The Chronomancer will probably have the Veil of Darkness, and either, depending on who I'm playing against, either Veil, one of the Lich Guard squads somewhere obnoxious for my opponent, or the Warriors squad in with their Gorse Reapers to put out a lot of damage. And then you've got your Scorpex and your Scarabs running around to essentially problem solve and sit on as many objectives as possible. Nice. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking at the moment. But as I said, I'm sitting here looking at my Excel spreadsheet because Battlescribe isn't working yet. And I currently have 7 tabs, each with a different list idea that I've got in here. So I'm still playing around with some ideas, all the different ideas there.
Nice. Well, we didn't really talk about Lich Guard today. They can still tank wounds for characters, right?
No, you
can't
be targeted.
Characters.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool indeed. So you can't target them if the Lich Guard are in front of them?
You can't target
just within
them. They're within 3 of the Lich Guard.
Okay. Wait, this is Silent King a character?
It's infantry.
Okay.
Infantry noble.
Yeah, that would be a little bit broken.
Yeah, that would be absolutely insane. But yeah, nice, man. And Nathan, I've seen you play some Destroyer heavy lists and stuff. What are you looking at the moment?
Yeah, I'm firing on the same command protocols as these boys with the objective secured 6-inch Dineeth. Right now, I haven't got any of the special characters in my list because I'm really just trying to try as many units as possible. Just in a patrol and an outrider, I've just got the Catacomb Command Barge with the neg-1 damage Wall of Trade and the Voltiac Staff, which I found with that new Quantum Shielding +1 Invo save strat is pretty durable, and with a Resorb on him. Also a Chronomancer with the Veil of Darkness, which is awesome for late game repositions, or to, like, if you haven't got deploy scramblers, it's great to use in those later turns to make sure as a backup option. And also the Cryptek Arcana for the Nano Mines, which is picking, it doesn't have to be visible, just a unit in the shooting phase within 18, and you half their advanced charge until your next turn, which is playing some slower armies like Death Guard or something like that. That can really let you control the pace of the game. And then I just have the Technomancer, which I've mentioned before, with the Failsafe Overcharger and the Canoptic Control Node, just to really buff those Wraith, Scarabs and Spiders. Mm-hmm. And then I'm running around with 6 Wraiths, 3 Spiders with the guns and the Gloom Prism for a deny, 2x7 Scarabs and a 4-man Scarab just to sit on a back objective. I've got 10 Immortals, I've got 10 Death Marks, which I've found to just be excellent so far, given how adaptable they are with that Deep Strike and Intercept. And then, like the rest of the boys, I've got the 10 Shield Lich Guard, which I think are just an excellent unit now, and 6 Scorpec Destroyers with the Plasmite, and then finally just the Crypto Thralls, which I honestly think are one of the absolute stars of this codex, not for how much they do, but for what they do in the middle. It's a 40-point unit that can deploy scramblers. Again, I think we do deploy scramblers about as well as any army, given the amount of redeploys and options that we have. And then also engage, given how much everything moves out, is another one that I pick. And depending on the army you're facing, I actually think While We Stand, We Fight isn't too bad, given a lot of those characters like to sit a bit further back if the opponent can't get to them.
Yeah, very true. I saw you use those Death Marks against Jordan the other day. You actually veiled them across and started picking off characters, which is really cool. Like, you wouldn't see Death Marks doing anything like that in 8th edition, that's for sure. But yeah, all these Necron lists seem to have a lot of ability to like flood that middle of the board and score your primary, as well as have options for secondary. What do you guys see, just to finish up, what builds do you guys see as very threatening to Necrons, doing well? Like what opponents and what armies?
I think anything high volume.
Anything that has the ability to cut straight through those reanimation protocols, and anything that can kind of, like, Necrons have an awesome toolbox, but I think armies that have a slightly bigger toolbox, like Harlequins, or maybe even Marines with some of the oppressive firepower in there. There's a lot of 2 damage in this book, so I think bulk Dreadnoughts might actually be a bit of a problem for the Necrons that I'm not sure how we solve at this point.
I think we said it a couple of times, because of the width of this codex, with everything being playable, I think it's going to come down a lot to player skill. Like, I think there's a very high skill cap for this codex, so it's going to come down really to master them. Just because there's so much that you can take. Like, besides the Doomsday stuff, I would say you could make pretty much this whole book work.
Yeah, that's very true, right? And that's gonna that's gonna have the next result, which is you might see these multiple builds of Necrons doing really well, and that causes another issue in the meta, or not an issue, but another thing the meta has to consider is people are going to have to build for multiple different Necron builds. They're going to have to build for the Silver Tide, the Scarab Rush, or even the Destroyer build that actually punches on really hard. So that'll be really cool to see. It's a shame we won't have many tournaments towards the close of this year, but it'll really be cool to see when the events start ramping up exactly how well these these units in this codex does. But I guess any closing. Sorry, Ben, go for it.
Well, I think the best thing about it is that this book, there's no real gotchas. There's no feel bads about it. It's all there. It's all playable, and it's all. It's like your opponent's going to know what you can do, but they can't really stop you from doing it. Like that's probably my favorite part about it. But what I think's best is that you can. People are going to know what your book does, but they can't really stop you.
Yeah. Yeah. But any other closing comments, guys? Lockie and Nathan, before we finish up.
I think the 2 and a bit hours or whatever we've been going pretty much covers it for me.
Yeah.
I'll just say, someone who's been playing them pretty consecutively the last 3 or 4 years, I think the toolbox is about as big as it's ever been, both in terms of model range, depth of the rules. I agree completely with Ben. I think it's turned a shooting efficiency army to something that can be built in so many different ways, and the floor, I think, has been raised a little bit, but the ceiling has just been pushed out massively to I think we'll see some really skilled players hopefully hop on them and show us what this army can really do. So I'm keen to see a lot, as you said, Dineeth, when tournaments ramp up, of what are some of the really good players. I've seen, like, Richard Siegler over in the States is having a look at them, so I'm keen what some of those sort of players come up with.
Now, we don't need good players to jump on, Nathan. We've got you.
Yeah, if you're looking for low mid-table examples, just come on over to any of the Brisbane events, boys. You can see how it's done.
I think, Nathan, you take 40k coaching, don't you? You know, so if any Necron players want, you know, a way to improve their game, hit up Nathan Bleakley.
You can deliver all your Doomsday Arcs and Nightbringers and Doomstalkers to a PO box that me, Ben, and Lockie share, and then we'll just throw them in the bin for you.
Oh, jeez. Well, hey, guys, I'd like to thank you, all three of you, so much for coming on. It's pretty late tonight, but I know you guys love the Cron, so it was great to have you on. And I didn't do too much talking today. I think I said like a minute worth of talking. I just sat on the trans-dimensional roller coaster as you guys took the show away, so it's good.
The time of the robot is now.
Yeah, you got the meme with Gothmog. But awesome, guys. Hey, thank you for our listeners who got through this episode. It was a big one. If you'd like to, you know, support us, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, give us a review if you liked it. It always helps new listeners find us. And we do have a Patreon to help cover our costs at www.patreon.com/thenormalblokes. But yeah, tell us what you thought of the episode. Any Necron ideas, shoot us a message, comment on the post, and yeah, have a good one, guys. Take it easy.
See you, boys.
See ya. Thanks, guys.